Father Chris Robinson from the Episcopal Church of Redeemer. Give us an open prayer.
The Lord be with you.
And you.
Almighty God, we thank you for this city in which so many have come together to bind themselves in common purpose to making a world better suited to the vision you have laid out. Give us grace and peace as we work together, climbing up that mountain to the city that you have promised us. We ask that you give us courage and compassion, grace and mercy, but most importantly, Almighty God, give us the sure knowledge that we are all in this together. We ask all these things in the name of your Son, our Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen.
We're going to ask our chancellor, Clerk Mr. John McAdams, to lead us in the pledge of allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We have a couple of addendums that we want to get to first. The first addendum is order approving transfer in the amount of $16,000 from 001-520-641 to 001-520-915 for the purpose of a 2022 Ford F-250 Super Duty truck from the Mack Hillard Ford for the price of $39.18 for Parks and Recreation Department. Motion.
Motion.
Second. Discussion. All in favor of that motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next addendum is order approving agreement between Harrison County Sheriff's Office and the Mississippi Bureau of Narcotics for the non-compensated special contract investigative contact pursuant to Mississippi Code annotated 4129-112 and authorize Sheriff Troy Peterson to execute same. Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of that motion say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. And also, while we're here, we're going to remove items number 38, item 39 from the agenda. We was waiting on the opinion of the Attorney General. We did not get that opinion, so we have to remove those items from the agenda. Item 38 and 39. Motion. Give me a second.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Okay. Item number 1, order acknowledging receipt of the, hold up. Okay, next, first we have the consent agenda. Items number 1 through 5 has been placed on the consent agenda, saying we can be routine, non-controversial matters which all supervisor like agree. The motion? Motion. Second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor of that motion say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Item 6. Order acknowledging receipt and approving a petition for decrease to the 2020 real personal property road as recommended by the tax assessor. Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of that motion say aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Number 7, item order acknowledging receipt of and approving petition for decreases to the 2021 bill. Motion. Second.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Item 8, order spreading upon the amendments personnel changes to the tax assessor's office listed on file with payroll clerk. Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carried. 9, order accepting low bid of $5,188,399 from J.W. Puckett and Company for the new Harrison County Motor Department Complex based on the lowest and best bid total and authorizing board president to execute contract documents after legal review. Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. 10, order awarding the low bid for the baseball field lights replacement at the Three Rivers Elementary Ball Field project to Lamy Electric, Inc. for the LED stadium floodlights installation alternate number 2 and total base bid amount of $311,000 based on the lowest and best bid total, and authorize the board president to execute contract documents.
Motion.
Second discussion. Have we had a bid on this particular project and rejected it?
We did.
Did the board reject it?
Yes, sir. The board rejected it and authorized re-advertising.
What was the reason?
None of the bids included all of their required documentation in them. This is the one that we talked about, had several attachments that were required as part of the bid, and none of the bidders included them, including the cost of use over the course of 10 years.
What are some of the requirements for this? Just off the top of your head, 2 or 3 big requirements.
If they were gonna submit an alternate product, they had to submit, basically their specifications of what was equivalent. They had to submit things like, cost of use over 10 years, so that we don't just buy the cheapest thing that's gonna cost us much further over the course of time. Warranties, references, some things like
What
that.
type of warranty? Manufacturers? I would
I'm sorry?
assume. It would be a manufacturer warranty, I would
Right.
assume, because otherwise, if someone local went out of business, we'd be stuck
And
with.
making sure that what we were getting was apples to apples and everybody was submitting the same warranty.
So I've pulled this, and I do not see a manufacturer's warranty on Laney's bid. I saw it on Weaver's, who was denied, who said they won it first, but then we're told there was a technicality. What was the technicality of why they had the lowest bid, but then didn't?
That was the one that we brought to you last time, but I don't have it with me. That was the one where there was a list of 12 items, I think, that everybody had to submit. I gave you the list of what everybody did and didn't submit.
And all of them were missing something.
Right, yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Do you recall that? Because normally on a technicality, we don't generally reject a lower bid. Do
You can
you
wait.
recall that?
I don't recall
I
that
don't either.
specifically. How long ago was it we did it?
It's probably 2 or 3 months.
I don't remember.
And I don't think that there's any hurry on this. If you want to table it for next time, we can get all that together for you. I didn't realize you have those questions, so I don't have it with me.
Is this the one we talked about where the bids had or had not been opened, or had not been
No,
published?
these were all open, and all of them contained missing items. None of them were fully complete, and there was a table that associated that had those. I remember answering a question or two about it, and we agreed to reject all and authorize advertising again.
I vaguely remember the discussion because the bids had been open, but I don't remember the
Because
details.
normally, I know in our discussions, that a technicality generally can be
It can be waived.
waived, and we can accept the lowest bid.
It sounds like it had more than one technicality, but I don't remember.
I don't
Go
recall.
back and look at it.
I'm looking at the finished product here, and I still don't see a manufacturer's warranty, and we're about to approve something, so.
It may be contained in the full bid and not, I'm not sure what you have in front of you. Like I said, I think this has been going on a while. If you want to get all those questions answered, I don't see a problem with tabling it and addressing it later.
Okay,
I don't have that with me.
okay, thanks.
I'll make a substitute motion to table.
Second.
Okay, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. And item number 11, order approving assistance from buildings and grounds, facilities and maintenance, and of the road department performance and any other responsibilities needed. Motion,
Motion.
second.
Second discussion. Yeah, Ms. Payne, do you have a list of what precincts need to be open? Are there any in District 1 is my question?
No, there's
Okay, it's all on the other.
9 out of 10 in District 4, and there's 1 each in 2 and 3.
Okay.
That's one, did you say in three?
West side,
I'm sorry?
west side
West side.
precinct.
Okay, is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Thank you.
Motion carries.
Thanks, Becky.
Item 12, order approving change order P 3520 C04 to the contract for the IP MPLS microwave system maintenance, replacing project with Communication International, Inc. as recommended Harris County Emergency Communication Commission.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Item 13, order agreeing between Machado Patano PLLC and Harrison County to provide architectural engineering and project management service for the new Harrison County Emergency Communication Office building, and authorizing the board president to execute same. Motion,
Motion.
second,
Second.
discussion.
Did we go out for bids on this?
Hi, good morning. So this is just for the design work of the new building. So bids will be when we are actually ready. We've got the design and we're ready to put
I
out
think
bids.
what she's asking you, did you go out for an RFP for?
We did, yes.
They
Architectural
won
service?
this, they won this part of it, so
Pardon?
they won this part of it.
Correct.
We went out for a bid, they got this part of it.
Oh, okay.
So then we'll go out for
That's
another
what we
one.
had, all right.
So this is-
Yeah,
Following up on the May meeting where we reported the.
generally, you don't go out, you wouldn't go out for bid for an architect, what you do is go out, request for proposal.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Okay. Okay, is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. 14,
14's at 10:30, but we can do number 15, it's a regular case before the planning commission. We have to concur with the recommendations of the planning commission. Number 15 on
okay, number 15 only, can we get a motion?
Motion.
Second,
Second.
concur with zoning commission, all in favor of that motion, say aye. All opposed, motion carries. Item 16, order approving the payment of claims listed.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. All opposed, motion carries. 17, order confirming with the county administrator on the appointment as listed on file with payroll clerk.
Motion.
Second,
Second.
discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. All opposed, motion carries. 18, order comparing with the road manager on employment as listed and on file with the payroll clerk and personnel and human resources department.
Motion. Second.
Discussion. All in favor, say aye. All opposed, motion carries. 19, order spreading upon the minutes the personnel changes of the sheriff's office as listed and on file with payroll clerk.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. 20, order spreading upon the minutes list of emergency low quotes and state contract orders issued by the purchasing department. Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. Next, we hear from the sheriff.
Hey, good morning. Total, we have 745, 36 misdemeanors, 126 females, 107 that are cleared state arrest, and 23 federal inmates.
Thank you, Sheriff. 22, order authorizing the board president to execute the quarterly reporting for Senate Bill 202, sheriff's funding for the Harrison County Law Enforcement Training.
Motion.
Motion.
Yeah, mo-
I'm sorry.
Second, discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. All opposed, motion carries. Order 22, order authorizing the board president to execute quarterly reporting, or no, yeah, that was 23. Order authorizing the board president to execute quarterly reporting for the Senate Bill 3065, sheriff's funding for the Harrison County Law Enforcement Training Academy. Motion.
Motion.
Second,
Second.
discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. All opposed, motion carries. 24, order authorizing the board president to sign the Mississippi Development Authority Capital Restoration Fund request for cash for services dated April 6, 2022 to May 26, 2022.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. 25, order authorizing the purchase of 35 Panasonic Tough Books and 32 docking stations for TCS ware for Mississippi Plate ELP 3760 for in-car computer upgrades in a total of $91,454.20 payable from 001-200-918, authorizing the county administrator to transfer $111,000 from 001-0202-468 to 001-200-918.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. Order acknowledging receipt of, approving, and spread upon the minutes the memorandum for the Mississippi Department of Finance and Administrative regarding upgrade mileage reimbursement rate, effective July 1, 2022.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. 27, order approving reimbursement for in-county travel for the following employees. We have number 20, let me see, number B, the correct amount should be $403.65 instead of $690.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion.
She came in this morning and said that she had caught that, but she'd sent it and caught it and that it was incorrect and she could change it, so. Thank you.
Is there any further discussion?
Oh, okay.
All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 28, order correcting the inventory adding back items that were previously still in use per attached list and authorizing the inventory clerk to add back to inventory. Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 29, order authorizing disposal of assets per attached list and authorizing the inventory clerk to remove the same from the inventory.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 30, order authorizing Carl Williams, Road Department District 4 to be added to the list of take-home vehicles after call hours. Motion.
Motion.
Second discussion.
Discussion.
What's the justification?
Yes, he's superintendent for District 4.
Oh, okay.
He's on call out 24/7.
Okay.
Okay, any further
Why,
discussion?
excuse me,
I'm
just,
sorry.
is it just now we authorize him?
He's just been promoted.
The super,
He's just been promoted.
he's just been, yeah.
Gotcha.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Item 31, order approving the low quote purchase of inventory tracking software from CNA Associates, Inc. at a cost of $9,930. Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. All in
This is,
favor?
yeah, Tim, this is the new,
No, this is inventory, this is a new system
Oh.
that we can scan and we can get the asset numbers.
Gotcha.
Thank God.
okay,
We
good.
need that
Yeah.
desperately.
Okay.
Good deal. Good. Any further discussion? All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Item 32, order authorizing the reimbursement to the road fund 150-000-360 in the amount of $5,554.52. Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. 33, order acknowledging receipt of the monthly report showing expenditures and liabilities incurred against each separate budget item and receipts of property taxes and other revenues for the month of June 2022 submitted by Chancellor Clerk John McAbb for Mississippi Code. Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 34, order approving payment of the following claims. Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Second?
Discussion. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. 35, order authorizing issuance of the following duplicate warrants for certificate and affidavit with file with the Chancellor Clerk.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. 36, order approving payroll for election and precinct workers for the special election for House Seat 119 to be held July 19th, 2022.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. 37, order concurring with the Chancellor Clerk and the County Administrator for salary increases as on file with the payroll clerk and payroll administrator and personal HR department for payroll administrator Tanya Sim due to additional duties effective July 1, 2022. And
Motion.
budget. Second.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. 38, order taking out the
38, 39.
we have took those two up. Moving swiftly.
I like it.
Order approving development agreement between Harrison County, Mississippi, and Nancy Holden LLC for the Bridgewater Bay project and authorizing the board president to execute same. Motion.
Motion.
Second. Discussion. All in favor of the
This
motion?
is the development
Okay.
along Calhoun Road on 605, John P. Shoot.
Okay.
It was approved in 2016. John here?
Yeah, he's right.
Oh, there he is. I'm sorry, I didn't see you. Looked over and said, I don't know if he wants to say anything or not. It's,
Okay.
the board had previously approved the TIF. They're just now putting it together.
All in favor of that motion, say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Item 41, order approving payment of $7,967.59 to Alta Planning and Design, invoice number 00-2020-16621. Motion.
Second.
Discussion. Good enough. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. 42, order adjudicating following the application for 2024 Thailand funds for project as listed. Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Order acknowledge receipt of Katrina Supplemental Community Development Block Grant Economic Development Quarterly Report for Gulfport Highlands. Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Acknowledge.
Discussion.
Discussion, what is
Yeah.
this? Acknowledgement receipt, Katrina supplemental, what is that development quarterly report?
Tricia Tricia, you want next time?
Yeah.
Oh, wait,
Yeah, she's been dealing, remember the Highlands?
I know, that's what.
This is the grant requirements, they have to report quarterly employment numbers, and this is that quarterly report, it is late. And, SMPDD prepares it, but,
We probably need to discuss it in executive
Yeah.
session too.
Okay,
yeah,
all right.
I mean, not a whole lot here other than acknowledging they gave us the report, but there are some issues.
All we doing is acknowledging receipt.
There are some issues that we need
Yeah,
to
there is.
discuss
Well,
about that. in
that's
executive
Okay,
session.
so we'll go ahead.
That's Tricia's hesitancy.
Yeah.
Because I said.
That's right.
Well, we're acknowledging the receipt of right now.
I
Order correct.
understand.
Okay. All right, all in favor of acknowledge the receipt of, get a motion?
I think you
Get a
got
motion, got a motion?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, no further discussion, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, get motion carries. Item 44, order approving job title change and pay increase for Lionel Turner, senior resources from transportation supervisor, case management supervisor, to senior resources agency supervisor. Money is within the budget. Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. All opposed, motion carries. 45, order adjudicating tax sales of August 31, 2020 and August 30, 2021 on the tax parcel number 1410K 03065 000 from 2019 to 2020. Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. All opposed, motion carries. 46, order of the Board of Supervisors of Harrison County accepting the contract of UP Stock Steel LLC for state aid project number SAP 2412 County Farm Road, Flat Tower Road, traditional parkway overlay project, and authorizing the board president to execute same.
Motion.
Second. Discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, motion carries. 47, order acknowledging receipt of the appraisal prepared by Alan Purvis on tax parcel number 0709D03024 000, adjudicating the appraised value offered to the property owner to acquire the right of way for improvements to the intersection of Canal London Road for project number SAP 2459, accepting the easement executed by, okay. Trying to practice mine. But, yeah. Authorizing payment of appraised value, approving of memorandum of agreement between, is it Kuhn Von Dahl?
Dow.
Yeah, regarding the removal of remediation of underground storage. Motion.
Motion.
Second.
Discussion.
May I explain a little bit to the board so y'all have a full understanding? What, this is the corner of Canal and Landon Road. The board will recall that the road was initially designed to go north of this gas station to avoid the gas pump. Unfortunately, that impacted the Coastal Electric Power Association's power station there, which has a grid underneath it. And that was gonna cost in excess of $1 million to adjust that. According to Coastal Electric, Mr. Rackley was kind enough to try to shift it to the south. the road, that is, and so it did. When we shifted to the south, that impacts the gas station, goes right up to the pumps and the tanks. And negotiating Mr. Deo there for now, there was the appraised value was $162,000, but there was an issue with removal of the tanks because the tanks will be about a third underneath the right of way and they have to be removed. You can't leave them there. Mr. Deo has applied for a grant with the MDEQ for remediation, so if they determine there's any underground remediation needed, the grant will pay for it, and Mr. Dow will be responsible for that. The county, as part of consideration for doing this easement, agreed to pay for the removal of the underground tanks, the canopies, and the gas, but not the remediation. Remediation, if it's necessary, will be responsibility of MDEQ and Mr. Dow through this grant. So it's a little bit complicated, but it was the only way to get it done without costing the county maybe twice what it's going to cost. There are some poles that still have to be removed by Coastal Electric, and there's a separate agreement with them to compensate them for removing the poles. They're on, I think they're on the other side of the Oak Road actually, that have big concrete power poles. They're huge. That will have to be moved. It's pretty expensive, but it won't impact the grid of this power station. So that's the basis for this agreement. We've gone around it for a year or so now. So Rebecca was instrumental in getting Mr. Deo's agreement and saved the county a lot of money by doing so.
Thank you.
Okay, sounds good, thanks. Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries 4808, approving utility relocation agreement between Harrison County and Coastal Electric Power Association and Cooperative Energy for the intersection improvement at Canal and Lander Road, First Judicial District, Harrison County.
Yeah, and this is the same thing. This is what I was mentioning.
This is the removal.
This is the change, moving the poles that are on the west side of Canal Road. They're huge.
Okay. Can we get a motion?
Motion.
Second. Okay, all in favor? Is there any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. 49, order approving the 16th section commercial lease agreement between the Harrison County School District and Landshapers Inc. for the land situated in the southeast quarter of section 16, township 7, south range 11, west 1st Judicial District, city of Gulfport. Motion.
Motion.
Discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. All opposed? Motion carries. Is it?
One more.
One more somewhere, huh? Oh, yeah. Speeding, Sheriff, don't give me no ticket, we're rolling. Order adjudicating and authorizing expenditure that listed as necessary to advertise and bring favorable notice, opportunities, possibilities, and resources to Harrison County, Mississippi, including the county logo being displayed along with link displayed at Harrison County online. Second. Discussion. All in favor of the motion, say aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Sheriff, you have anything?
No.
Ms. Pam, you have anything? Supervisor Ladd?
No.
Supervisor Powell?
Nope.
I'm good. Supervisor Martin?
Well, I was gonna nominate Leonard Pennsylvania to replace the sheriff on the mental health board, but I think he has to resign first.
Oh.
I'll make a motion that we appoint Leonard Pennsylvania to serve.
Second.
Need to accept his resignation.
Oh, yeah, well,
Are you
and
sure, Sheriff, are you sure?
Here, write it down.
It's a good board to be on. There's a lot you can learn from that board. But I don't have time or to do it. And I think I did it for over a year, so.
Good deal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Troy,
You're
for
welcome.
taking that because it's a very difficult time.
I guess my motion will amend to accept the sheriff's resignation and
There you go.
appoint Leonard
Right.
Pennsylvania.
Second.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries.
And do we need to do anything? We gotta get this bond for the building and for his training center. Do we need to take any action to get the ball
Yeah, we already got
rolling?
that resolution.
Oh, we already have it.
I don't know.
On the bond for the building and the sheriff's building.
Needs to be about
No,
10 million.
because we were getting a cost estimate on repairs for the,
Oh, the IDB, sorry. Okay, so let's try.
We're doing it, okay, good, good. Anything else? Okay, Supervisor Rocker, you have anything?
No, sir.
Okay, Mr. John McAllen, you have anything?
No, sir. We have a number of items we need for executive session. We
Okay.
need closed session to discuss some of them, make sure y'all agree they qualify.
Okay, motion to go into closed session.
Motion.
Second.
All in favor of that motion, say aye. All opposed?
The exec, we can go ahead and do closed session, but the executive session will take longer than 30 minutes, so we won't be able to
Won't be able
come out of it.
Yeah, go into closed session
So,
and then come out and do the hearing.
Okay.
So we're in closed session.
Okay, welcome everyone back. We now have our zoning hearing that's scheduled, and I'm gonna read this all in the packet. Yes, sir.
We have a court reporter who I believe needs to sit up. Melissa, are you gonna?
She needs to come on.
I'm waiting for security to check my bag.
You gotta watch this court.
Mr. Bobby. Mr. Bobby L. Terrace is out in the hallway. Table.
Claudine, okay, Claudine.
It's okay, I've got it on paper. Thank you.
West Park, the west, is
West side.
that the one in front of the launch, boat launch? Just open. Is that the one in front of the old yard? I mean,
It's not open, they just broke the ground.
oh, they were supposed to name that park after that family.
Yeah. Boat launch.
The boat launch.
They just broke ground.
I just saw it on the agenda. So. Oh, I never have heard.
We're searching for a little table.
Look, take that top
that
right
off
off of
this?
there and there's her table. It's removable.
And you slide it
It's
over
just-
to her. So she wants, then that'll be her chair. You got it?
Yeah, it's fine. There's her table. Can I say something?
Just let us know when you're ready.
Okay, I'm trying, I'm sorry.
Can I say something before we get started?
Shorthand. Before we did that, I couldn't figure it short.
Okay, if I may have your attention, please. I'm no reporter, but I'm gonna speak the truth. I want Miss Angel Middleton to come up here. We got her a special gift for
You
today.
have no shame.
Pancake, we miss you.
I know exactly where I get this.
I had nothing to do with that.
I'll have to tell you.
I didn't even know about this.
I speak the truth when I tell you. We miss you. I have to.
It made me laugh.
Y'all have to ask her about this.
That's funny.
My favorite pancake.
I'll step
I'm ready.
Ready?
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, we have an appeal filed by Angel Militant and surrounding property owners of the planning commission decision to approve case file 1709 HC 030 for an extension of a conditional use permit to allow 235 lot, single lot, family residential known as Windbridge.
Okay, just some rules for the appeal today. First, we'll hear from the appellants, who are the neighbors to the project. And then they'll have a maximum of 3 speakers, 10 minutes each. Then we'll hear from the applicants, a maximum of 3 speakers, 10 minutes each. And then the appellants will have a chance at a rebuttal for 5 minutes at the end. This property was rezoned in 2006, about 8 months after Hurricane Katrina. For whatever reasons, and engineers can tell you why it wasn't developed way back then. In 2017, it came back to the board with more lots than what was originally applied for in 2006. The Planning Commission brought it back, approved the request, but down to the original 235 lots. There's also a 25-foot buffer because there will be some rear yards of houses that face John Clark Road at the back. So there'll be a wooded buffer and fences along there to hide the backs of the houses. And then the Planning Commission required 3 parks. The 3 parks is not listed in here, but it's a requirement of the subdivision process anyway. So the 3 parks are still in play. So in this year, nothing happened after the 2017 approval of the development on appeal by the Board of Supervisors. So the Planning Commission approved it with that restriction, and then on appeal, the Board of Supervisors concurred with the Planning Commission. So today it's a new project. The S14 sewer treatment project is finished and is available today where it wasn't before. And so they got an extension of their conditional use permit and they're back, and another appeal was filed.
Secretary, let me ask you a question. When the initial conditional use permit was approved by the commission, was that appealed?
It was appealed.
And what was the result of that? But apparently it was denied.
The appeal was denied by the board.
So if there was an appeal, it was denied.
Yes, sir.
So what we're dealing with today is whether we extend the time period in which the development can proceed.
That's right. A conditional use permit has a time limit to act on.
Right.
And they did not act since 2017. Now it's 2022, and they're ready to proceed today. So it's like a new conditional use permit application. It's not only an extension of the original one. It's like a new one.
What was the reason, I'm sorry,
I was gonna ask that.
yeah, what was the reason it was not extended?
I believe it was the water and sewer situation, but
Oh,
I'd
that's
rather the
14.
engineers address that specifically.
Okay, all right, so first up, then we're going to have Ms. Angela, I guess, making the appeal to come up, and the direction has been given by Mr. Patrick Long. Ms. Renee,
Excuse me, before we start, Tim, legal stuff. Are we actually considering a new conditional use permit? Or are we considering whether to extend the time and the reasons why we should or should not extend the time? Or are we considering a new conditional permit?
I was confused by that with Mr. Bonk, but I ended up thinking it was a new application for a conditional use permit, not the old one extended. Is that right or wrong?
Well, the application is to extend it, but it's the same conditional use permit rules that apply.
So it's not a
So
new
it's an
permit.
extension.
It is an extension.
Did the conditional use permit expire?
It does expire.
Oh, has not expired yet. They're asking for an extension of it.
The one in 2017 expired.
Okay.
Now is a new application for
Well, that
an
is not
extension
what
of a
this
conditional use.
says.
Okay.
The
That's
reason
why-
that I ask, because the evidence would be a different, if we're considering an extension, that's one thing. The evidence why we should or should not, or whether we're considering a conditional use permit, which would require other evidence.
I agree, and that, I'm still, you just ended up saying that it was a new application.
That's what I don't
The
understand.
same rules apply for a conditional use permit. An extension happens frequently where
Right.
if somebody, most commonly it's to place a manufactured home. If they don't act within 6 months, then they have to apply for an extension. But it's the same rules of a conditional use permit.
But has the conditional use
We're aware of the rules. The question is, I pulled the minutes from the Harris County Planning Commission, and it clearly says extension of the conditional use permit to allow for 235, blah, blah, blah. It says extension, so that's what the Planning Commission voted on.
Right.
Which is what's before us today,
So it's an
the way it
extension.
looks.
But it's not only the rules for an extension, it's a,
But if it expired,
Wait a
then they
minute.
don't get extension.
unless they ask for it. That's a-
But it shouldn't be called an extension, it should be called a new argument, right?
Absolutely.
You know, our policy has always been you request an extension. And I'm pretty sure that's in the language of the zoning ordinance.
Even after 5 years when it's expired.
But my deal is, according to the Planning Commission's minutes, what they discussed and voted upon was an extension of
And he basically
At
saying
the
that
time.
And I got a problem with this, I'm not,
I did too.
Yeah.
I think the boards have the same problem. You had a conditional use permit that was granted in 2000, when?
17.
That's what I thought, reading the record. Trying not to put words in your mouth. That was extended a couple of times by a request, right?
Not a couple of times, just this once in 2022.
When did it
Well, but
expire?
it had expired.
It expired 6 months after the last approval in 2017, like every conditional use permit.
They have to move to extend it.
I think it's critical what we're doing.
I do too.
Whether we are approving an addition, a new application for a conditional use permit, or are we considering the reasons why they are asking for an extension?
I agree with you, that's the different,
That's a different,
conditional
two
use-
different things here.
Well, the conditional use permit has already been granted. It's expired, right, Patrick?
So,
Yes? Conditional use permit was previously granted, correct?
right.
That by the terms of the expired in 6 months, if not extended. It can be extended, the commission with the authority of the commission, but it expired and 4 or 5 years went by. Then
That's
they
right.
moved for an extension of the conditional use permit, but the new evidence was put on, changes were made.
Consistent with the previous decision from 2017. So the new application is consistent with the,
Is there a new application? This is what's,
it's the same case file
I
number. Let me read
understand, but
this.
was it a new application? That's a big difference, whether you're extending the conditional use permit or you are
New application.
doing a new application for a conditional use permit. Because one's already granted. It expired.
Right. So a new application was turned in, but the type of application is an extension of the previous project. So.
Pat, go ahead and read what you're about to read.
Okay. The planning commission shall be further empowered to review and/or rescind an existing conditional use permit whenever an additional or alternate conditional use is being requested for the same property. A conditional use has not been activated within 6 months of its approval, or the applicant has not applied for an extension of time. So technically, it's an extension of time, is what they're asking for.
But they didn't do that within 6 months.
Right, that's not.
They never do it within 6 months, it's always at some point.
Well, if they
Why
don't,
do you
then they
have 6
risk.
months on it is my question, because nobody, why is 6 months
Wait a
the,
minute,
I'm sorry.
no, Malcolm was fixing to say something, I was waiting. Trying to wait.
But why would you have 6 months on something like a subdivision, because you know
Well-
that's impossible to do?
We actually amended the ordinance this year, and this is the new addition. This conditional use permit will automatically extend for 6-month periods not exceeding 4 such extensions, which is only 2 years. If there is ongoing progress towards the completion of the subdivision or development subject to state or federal jurisdictional approvals. Recording of the final subdivision plat shall constitute full and final compliance with this conditional use permit. So a manufactured home can be placed in 1 day. They have 6 months to place it and get a permit for it. But a dirt pit or a subdivision, the application process continues after they get local zoning approval. So that's what takes longer than 6 months, and that's why we made that little text amendment. But that was not in place in 2017.
It needs to be separated, I would think. But I would think mobile home needs to be totally separated.
I agree.
Basically, Tim, what's confusing to me is if there's a new application for for a project, then are we considering the merits of that project again? Or are we going to consider the justification for the reasons why it didn't get started? That's two different things.
I think there's a problem. I mean, ultimately, and I read this, but I didn't read it that closely. I forgot about the previous appeal. You got a CON, a conditional use permit, CUP, was wrong acronym, that was appealed to this board, affirmed by this board, appealed to the circuit court.
No, sir,
No,
this never went to court.
Oh, I thought you
That's
said
not
it
that I'm
did.
aware of.
I thought you said it did, I'm sorry. The board granted the CUP conditional use permit. That did not get appealed.
No, sir.
So that
Not to
now-
court.
Not to court, so the board's decision came final.
Yes, sir.
That conditional use permit had a 6-month limit on it, expired after 6 months, could be extended. Was not extended,
Until
right?
now.
No, wait, he got there yet. 4 years later, somebody filed an application to extend a permit that had been issued, a conditional use permit done 4 years before.
Yes, sir.
And y'all took new evidence when you already had a CON, I mean, a CUP, not a CON. You already had a CUP that had expired without a new application for a conditional use permit, right?
There was a new application.
Application for extension, not a new application that met all the requirements of for a conditional use permit.
Well, extraordinary evidence was presented. It was a full-blown new hearing.
Except you're only asking for it, procedurally, you're asking for an extension
Yes, sir.
of the CON that was 4 years previously that it had expired. I got some concerns about that. Let's let does the developer have an attorney here? Mr. Jones,
Mr. Jones.
you want to enlighten your view of the current standing of the?
Yes.
And then we'll let the appellates, do y'all have an attorney at the time?
I'm just gonna represent myself on this one.
Okay, is there any attorney representing the other side on this appeal? Then y'all can handle that when you get up. Go ahead.
So,
We're here on whether or not,
I
what we're here
understand,
on.
I see there's a lot of discussion about something that should have been, I guess, handled at the planning commission level, but,
Procedural issue.
so anyway, basically what it amounts to is exactly as you said, that it was granted in April of 2017. We could not go forward because of the issues that developed with S14. And my attempts to try to advance the project forward was to keep up with the project of getting the repair of S14. As you well know, that took about 3 years. And so eventually, it did get repaired after you had to hire a new contractor, do a lot of different things. And by the time we had the hearing before the planning commission, it in fact had been repaired, I think 3 or 4 months prior to that. So it was my understanding that the process has been, and has always been, that if you want to come back, you could ask for it to be extended. There was no requirement that said you had to wait, after 6 months, after a year, whatever, you could come back and ask for an extension, as long as there was justification as to why you didn't go forward to begin with. And the reason why we didn't go forward was because of the lack of the sewer S14 line that we had to have.
Yeah, but, Malcolm, with all due respect, if it was 6 months, 8 months, a year, I could understand, because not a lot has changed in that period of time, but 4
Right.
years.
Right.
Huge difference, and so, and everybody recognizes that's a huge difference, because you went forward and put on new evidence when you're seeing,
Right.
your conditional use permit had already been granted, just an
Right.
extension.
So we actually went ahead and filed a new application because we were directed to do so. And we actually put on proof about all of the
For a
factors.
new application, or a
Right.
new application for extension, application for
A
extension.
new application, it's the same application that you use for regular conditional use permit.
So for our bookkeeping purposes, we used the same case file number so that.
I'm okay with that.
But it's the same application you use for regular conditional use.
Yes, sir.
No different.
Yeah, but you didn't grant a new conditional use, you extended one that was 4.5 years old.
You can call it extension if you want, but the process was, Mr. Holman, that everybody showed up. We had to put on proof. We weren't just there to say, hey, we want to ask for an extension just because that's 14. We put on proof about all the factors. And so it came to the planning commission and they approved it. Now, call it extension, call it a new application. We ended up at the same point, which is that now we're here today to go ahead and deal with that decision. You can say that extended it, and I don't see anything in the ordinance, the zoning ordinance, that prevents the board, or the planning commission rather, from extending it after any period of time. It just says, now the ordinance says that you get 4 automatic extensions. So that means the first 6 months plus 4 extensions, that's another 24 months. That means you get 30 months without doing a thing. They're automatic extensions, is that right?
Yes, sir.
So that would have carried us into the year of 2020, okay? Of course, we came in, after that, and that's why we had to do what we did. We followed every process that we were told to follow. Nobody made any objection at any level before the planning commission to any procedural point
Let me ask you this, 'cause
about what we're talking about now.
this is a procedural issue.
Yeah.
So what's before the board today is merely the issue of extending a conditional use permit, not whether or not the conditional use permit should have been granted or not. So this is where this becomes a procedural issue for me.
Okay.
Just how are we gonna handle this when we get up and Judge Dotson looks at it again?
Well,
And so
if she's the judge that gets it.
I'm
Right.
being facetious about the case we had, where
Right.
we didn't put it on the agenda in
Right.
94 days instead of 90 days.
Right.
I mean,
I
so
think-
what's before the board? Is it just merely the extension, or is it the granting of a conditional use permit in general with all the factors that go along with that?
I think the only fair way to do this is to consider it as a conditional use.
A new,
And not-
new application for conditional use.
Rather than just an extension, because otherwise, I'm afraid we are gonna get up on appeal and somebody's gonna throw some argument out there that doesn't really count, but maybe somebody will grab hold to it and say it does count. So, and then I gotta start all over again, another year of fighting through to do the same thing, so.
Well, and that to me is a problem, just like we
Right.
wasted a year
Yeah.
because it was 94 days instead of 90 days.
Right. And let me say this, if we tried to argue and say, hey, we weren't gonna file a new application, hey, we weren't gonna do anything we were told to do, then I would say that might make sense. But somebody should have to make objections at the right moment, which would be before the planning commission. To say that procedurally this is wrong, then to waste our time.
Except that what the problem is, a conditional use permit by very nature, only this board can approve it. They make a recommendation, the
I'm
board
aware.
approves it. So it's before the board. It's
I
not
agree.
like it's something that they didn't object to before the planning commission, and now my greater concern is to not have what we had happen in the other one where,
Yeah.
you know, there was a 90-day, just so you'll know, there was a case where these were supposed to be acted on the board within 90 days.
Right.
For whatever reason, it got put on the agenda 94 days.
Right.
They appealed it, the court said dismissed because you didn't act on it, because the code says if you don't act on it in 90 days, it's dismissed. So it got dismissed after a year's worth of litigation in circuit court.
Right.
This has that same type of problem to me. I don't know how a court's gonna look at it, because you didn't treat it as a new application, you treated it as an extension.
I treat it as a new application.
I
Planning
understand that.
Commission
Planning
treated it.
Commission did.
No, I don't agree, I disagree with that. Otherwise, we wouldn't have had all of the testimony and the evidence that we did from both sides. If it was purely a question of a continuation or an extension, then we would have only debated the issue about S-14, and that's not what happened. People talked about drainage, traffic, school systems, all kinds of things. It's all on the record, you see it in the transcript.
But it's different, can this board, if it's just an appeal on the extension or not, can the board consider the evidence on a new conditional use permit?
Of course they can, because that's what the testimony was, and that's what the evidence presented was.
That's a good question.
Yeah.
So we're gonna, treat this as a new,
I think that's the only fair way to do it, because that's what the testimony was and the evidence presented.
yeah,
So, and if we do it that way, Tim, then at least we won't have some kind of a crazy procedural issue like we did last time.
I think the board's choices are that the board can go forward.
Yeah.
And I have some concerns about whether or not you're ruling on a conditional use permit previously granted or an extension of that permit, because that's what they acted on. They didn't issue a new conditional use permit. The other thing is the board could say, or remand it back to the planning commission to.
May I interject something? If we consider the application as a new conditional use permit, we've already acted on the previous one back in 17.
Yes, sir.
In 17, then it's gonna be incumbent upon the folks who are against it to show what conditions have changed. If the conditions have not changed, then I think it's incumbent upon the board to uphold that decision. Am I wrong?
Well, it's the question, quite frankly.
What I'm trying to get to, who has to prove what?
Right, that's
the whole point.
what's before the board is a grant of an extension of a pre-existing conditional use permit. That's what's before the board.
That's what I asked.
And that, to me, is a problem.
Let me read just from the transcript. This is on page 46. Commissioner Widener, I made a motion to approve the request subject to meeting the park requirements of 235 lots and based upon the facts set forth in the application, the entire record before the planning commission, the hearing thereon, all of which are incorporated herein, and the findings of facts of the planning commission. The basis for the motion is that the proposed development is compatible with the neighborhood as described in the application. If that was just an extension, it wouldn't have made any of those findings.
I understand,
Yeah,
we've complained about that language before.
okay.
That's, as Judge Dotson said, that's not the standard, if you recall.
Well, that was a rezoning case. This one is not.
Well,
That's a difference.
a conditional use permit is considered to be a rezoning case too. That's my understanding. Now here it's not, because this one's already been issued.
Right.
You're doing an extension.
I would actually disagree on that. That's for another day. Anyway, I think we're in a position you can move forward with this. I think basing upon the actual record that was presented, the decision was made. And this use of the word extension really is irrelevant to the point. You know, like you said, yes, you did it years ago. But when we came in 2022, we basically were saying we're here with what we have now. And we really couldn't go forward until that S-14 was repaired, and it was done, I think, 3 or 4 months prior to that hearing date. Planning Commission. So I don't know what else to do. I mean, it was the change in circumstance was in fact that thing that had, you know, how could we go ahead and go forward? I mean, we couldn't fix S-14.
Was there new evidence presented different from what was presented on the original conditional use permit?
New evidence presented. you know, different people got up and testified. I mean, you know, I presented information like I do every time I put on a case for a conditional use permit. Okay, I didn't just say, we're here for an extension. Okay, I just didn't go that route.
What I'm reading is, we
Yeah.
talked about drainage,
Right,
ingress, egress,
Right,
traffic, all
traffic.
those were
everything,
before.
right.
I don't remember seeing that the schools were too crowded, but that may have been.
Somebody said that at one point.
Yeah, I see that,
Yeah,
but I'm talking about, I was here.
right. This case was mostly about drainage, to be honest with you, but I'm not gonna just say that other issues were not discussed.
Well, somebody needs to pick the poison,
Looks the
because
same to me.
the poison is this, okay? Board agrees to the commission's extension of the conditional use permit from 4 years ago. It's appealed to circuit court.
I'm not asking.
A year later, the circuit court says, you shouldn't have done that, should have done a new application.
Yeah.
I don't care what you say, that's what it is, an extension, not a grant. Things that too long, and they said, reverse it, now a year goes down, now you gotta start all over and do it again. Or, board can take a position that should not have extended it 4 years, remand it back to the planning commission, require them to file a new application for a new CON.
We did file, Tim, it's the very same application that you filed for conditional use. There's no extension.
And if they had granted a new conditional use permit, I would agree with you.
Well, they did. Read the motion. It is a conditional use permit application. We didn't, there's no extension form. You just write a letter for an extension.
So the original application in 2017 was 290 lots.
I read that.
Okay, and so, by the time it finished with the appeal before the Board of Supervisors, it was down to 235. So this new application was for 235.
Right.
Consistent with the approval that the board granted in 2017. But there is an application for the original case, and there's an application for this 235 lot.
Let me tell you another reason why it was a new conditional use application, Tim. If it was just an extension and only an extension, they wouldn't have to have an advertised hearing. They could have just written a letter. We wouldn't have had to follow the new, the conditional use application with everything that goes with it. Right?
I don't disagree with you, except that's not what it was asked for, not what was granted, from what I read. But,
The motion
yeah.
Commissioner Wagner made says to approve the request subject to meeting the parks requirement of 235 lots. So it appears to me that it was.
Right. It wasn't just an
listed upon
extension.
as a new
Right.
permit.
Anyway, it's not my time yet. I come after they do, so that's all I
That's
have.
fine. We were talking about that in merit, so.
Okay.
All right, okay, we'll go for it. Anthony, you wanna come up?
My name is Angel Middleton. My property address is 15446 John Clark Road. I'm about 4 lots down from the proposed development. In April of 2006, the subject property was rezoned from A1 to R1 zoning, and then no progress was made. After 2 years, it was our understanding that property should have reverted back to its original classification. However, that did not happen. Our neighborhood consists of R1, E1, and A1, and has long been established as a rural community. My property is home to 3 barns and 8 horses. My property borders the beautiful 800-acre Harrison County farm, where they take livestock of all types that have been abused, neglected, and surrendered. That is how far out this property development is. It is right next to the Harrison County Fairgrounds, within 4 or 5 properties. My neighbors and I have made financial investments a long time ago in the properties we own. Many of us are multi-generational landowners, family like the Millers, the Triggs, the Farlows, the Switzers, Stockstills, Parkers, Paolas, and so on and so on. A place where you know your neighbor's name because they have been your neighbor for 30, 40, 50 years. Our neighborhood is mainly comprised of 2 acres, up to 50 acres with single-family homes and livestock. on larger properties. I'm sorry, y'all, this is super important to us. Our newest neighbor is the Botros family who immigrated from Egypt 25 years ago and are on 20 acres that is zoned A1. They share a fence with this proposed development. They have in the last year invested almost $300,000 in this property by building barns, ponds, buildings, roads, and service their farm. They currently have cows, chickens, guineas, ducks, a donkey, and pigs. They did not receive notice about this, and neither did I for that matter. Livestock in no way are compatible with high-density lots like this, and the one before you today, A1 has a right to livestock, and 235 lots on 235 lots on 60-foot lots will have many small children. Children will definitely want to see and pet the animals. That is their nature. People that close to livestock can be seriously injured or even killed. Section 401 says about A1, and I quote, "It is the purpose of this district, the A1 district, to encourage and protect such use from all urbanization and urban sprawl." That is exactly what this proposed development is. It is urban sprawl, and our rules specifically speak to that very issue. In fact, the stated purpose of the Harrison County Unified Code is, and I quote, "to promote the general welfare of the citizens of Harrison County, specifically," and it lists the following: "to lessen congestion in the streets, to secure safety from fire, panic, or other dangers, and lastly, to preserve overcrowding of land and inappropriate mixed use of land." This spells out everything you all need to know right there in black and white. First off, this will increase congestion in the streets. If you say 2 cars per house, that's almost 500 more cars a day. The developer's previous submission regarding this plan stated in 2015 the traffic count west of Canal, where this is, was 2,500 a day. That was 7 years ago. No telling what it is now. Second, it serves to secure the safety of the residents of this community. This site plan shows only one entrance for 235 lots. That goes completely against the 2018 International Fire Codes that this county has already adopted. We ask that you not allow Mr. Jones to define our neighborhood by the ones previously built by this same group, in particular Terra Brook and Cardinal Point. To start with, Terra Brook is plagued by lots the same size as this proposed subdivision that are so small, approximately a quarter of the residents park literally on the sidewalks, not on the streets. I had pictures of all this, but I didn't want to present them because I didn't present them before. The lots are home to campers, trailers, many of which are just sitting there. It is an eyesore. They have no active HOA. This makes this subdivision a horrible neighbor. Cardinal Point consists of one road with about 15 houses, but it has been in the press for its flooding issues, poor workmanship, and according to homeowners, no service after the sale. Both of these developments were built by the same group before you today. We all wanted to be good neighbors after Katrina and did not fuss about this development. Now we are stuck with a development that is already run down in about 15 years, I'm guessing. Speaking of flooding, the property on the site plan already floods the surrounding neighbors, even to the point of road closure during heavy rain events. This is in its natural state, with its vegetation, not uncovered and used up by cement and sidewalks and all that. That will only contribute further to this problem. As I said before, A1 agriculture with livestock should never be bordering urban development of this nature. This site plan shows 12 houses directly butting up to the Bartros's active farm with all of the animals I mentioned before. I gave you all, there's a map of the comprehensive plan. This is what we would like. This is right out of the comprehensive plan. This is a conservation subdivision. That's what we would like. This fits in with our community. This is pretty. This is what was approved. I'll be glad to give you each a copy of that. This would be acceptable to us,
Yeah.
even with
Can I-
small,
can I
when you,
see it?
can we stop the timer?
You stop the time. I'm sorry.
You good?
Just want y'all to know what,
Might give you a little
Conservation.
liberty. Little-
yeah, catch my breath. Kleenex.
That's why I brought it. I didn't like it.
You tried. I gave y'all a map, that's the out of the comprehensive plan, that's a conservation subdivision, and it is the preferred development method in the G2 sector. This looks nothing like the proposed development before you, it's much more beautiful and would be acceptable to our community. Lots can remain small and profitable to the developer, but the green space would benefit the home buyer as well as our established neighborhood. John Clark Road is designated in the comprehensive plan as a scenic preservation corridor. We want to preserve that beauty for all who come that way in the future. If this proposed development fit and was compatible with the existing land use, we would not have 85 objection letters, all of who are indeed neighbors. Do not be misled by statements that these are not our neighbors. If it fit, none of us would be here today. If you're here against this, please stand up. This plan is detrimental to our property values and our way of life. We humbly and sincerely ask that you not put their desire to make money over our safety and integrity of our beloved community. If you would not put this exact development next to your home, please do not put it next to ours. That is all I'm asking y'all. If you wouldn't put it next to yours, please don't put it next to ours. Thank you.
Angel?
Sir.
I'm still not sure what we're doing, and whether it's an extension or whether it's reconsidering the conditional use permit. Can you tell us some things that have changed since the initial approval of the conditional use permit?
The
as of now?
2017?
What are some significant changes that have occurred in your area that you're talking about that
So-
was different than, that it did not exist at the time of the initial approval of the conditional use permit?
Okay, so one big concern of ours is S14, because we're all familiar with S14 and its problems. It was a gravity line, and it was to take, S14 was designed to take Riverbend Utilities Lagoon offline. Well, then they had to change that to a force main. You cannot hook these homes into a force main. The lagoon, according to the HDUA director, is supposed to be taken offline. So we do not have any understanding. You cannot take a lagoon offline because you can't hook these houses into a force main. So how do you take the lagoon
They
offline?
downsize it.
Well, that's a serious issue if that's the case. I'm not sure that's the case, but that was the whole point of the F-14 was to take that lagoon offline.
And it
It's a
had,
high
What she
pressure
said,
line.
I don't know. We would have, I don't know if Jackie could address that, but that's a serious
It's
issue.
a high pressure line, but they use a reduction, they use a
Sure.
reducer.
I know that.
And the
That's what I'm saying.
reducer
But
would
she's
be
saying
what
that
they
they
would
can't
have
hook
to
these
use
houses.
to plug into.
What she's saying is, and correct me if I'm wrong, I won't put words in your mouth, that but this development still will require that lagoon. That's what she's saying.
that's the only thing I
And
can,
by God, why did we spend millions of dollars putting in a F-14? But some engineer's gonna have to address that.
Angel, what about the traffic? I've had several calls from y'all, and I appreciate you all being here. Have you seen the traffic increase since 2017?
well, I knew that study from the Regional Development Authority was from 2015, and it said the traffic count in 2015 was 2,500 a day. And this is a small 2-lane road.
So the last study was in 2015.
2015, so I'm not sure of the current traffic count, but I imagine they could get that. And it is a big concern, like I said, with the fire safety, but it's really a concern because this is it's all surrounded by A1 agriculture and E1 very low density. So here's
this was in the comprehensive plan, which we submitted. This is, let's see, this is the subject property right here. This is John Clark Road. This is all the county fairgrounds right here. That's my property. And so this is the Egyptian family, the Bertroses, and like I said, the development runs right up here along that fence line. But this is all A1. Light green is A1. As you see, this is A1. This is R1, and the green is E1, very low density residential.
But
So,
the yellow's R1, right?
yellow is all
So
R1.
the front side of it's surrounded by R1.
This is the John Clark Road side. This is agriculture, and this is agriculture.
Right, but in the other side, it's all
This is
R1.
agriculture. This right here is also their property. That was, this is Wednesday, I believe it's right, isn't it? House.
Other than the S14, can you come up with any other changes?
Just like I said,
Subsequent to the approval.
the neighbors have invested a huge amount of money in that agricultural land because they thought it was protected by zoning. They felt comfortable in doing that because it was already A1, but to have, a heavy development come up.
Okay. All right, appreciate it. We got,
Next time.
you got-
Renee.
yes.
Hi, my name is
Time's
Pat
left?
Howard.
I'm sorry.
I live at 13381.
Excuse me, just 1 minute.
Angel used all but a minute and 24 for time.
Oh, the whole 30
No,
minutes?
we
10
asked
minutes.
a question.
Okay, I know, but I'm trying to.
I'll pass that on to somebody.
That's a good question.
Okay,
Good morning, my name is Pat Lowry. I live at 13381 Old Highway
I'm sorry, I
49.
didn't catch your last name, sir.
Lowry.
Wow.
Lowry. I'll start out reading from the transcripts of the Harrison County Planning and Zoning Commission, the last meeting we had. And I will restrict my comments to the transcript and the plans as they have been presented. I'm going to refer to the first one is, let's see. So, this was my comments. Ladies and gentlemen, I appeared before this commission and the Board of Supervisors on several occasions concerning runoff and my experience with it. I will not go into the Chinese algebra of how you calculate runoff, but basically, when you convert vegetation, trees, and bushes into rooftops, driveways, and roads, you increase the runoff tremendously. I'm experienced in that, and I've given a detailed discussion on how you calculate it. Mississippi construction law requires that the owner, the designer, and the contractor be fair, reasonable, and prudent in all their endeavors. I'm not seeing that here, not at all. There's no calculation of runoff on this project that I have seen as of yet. We don't know how much water is going to be put into this already stressed system. So my question to you tonight, for the record, is how you can approve a project that is going to impact so many people when you do not know how much runoff is going to be introduced into these areas and affect these people's lives. When you convert all these areas into houses, houses, roads, sidewalks, and things like that, you increase runoff tremendously. Just the rooftops alone and a very small driveway, you're looking at 12 acres of accumulated runoff. That's just a very, very conservative estimate. And that's not counting the roads, sidewalks, sheds, and patios, and any other appurtenances. You have no idea the amount of runoff that's going to come off on this project. Neither does the developer. You have, so why are there no calculations of runoff? Well, let me tell you why. First off, it's expensive. It requires topographical surveys. It requires soil bores, soils analysis, perk test, and a lot of other things. Tremendous amount of work to do that. It's time consuming, but it's accurate. And the developer does not want to know the answer because the remedy for all that runoff is expensive. It's extremely expensive. But the worst reason why they're not providing that calculation, and please, I don't mean any disrespect, because y'all don't require it.
It's just that simple. I refer to page 13 of the transcripts, again, and this is Mr. Jones. Let me say one thing I think is important and something that has come up more recently. We have got a very small amount of wetlands to fill right here, up around lot 16, 17, and it goes into different locations. My question is, and this is to the developer, is who determined that these were wetlands? Okay, who determined that these were wetlands? Was it a civil engineer or environmental engineer? I don't think that that's been submitted. If it wasn't by a degreed engineer, then how do you know how to plot that on the map, or how big to make it? I refer to the page 27 of the transcript. That's when Mr. Evans says that, like I said, excessive traffic on the roads, that to me is just common fact, that the traffic is going to be astronomical. And there's nothing in the record, there's no studies or anything to show otherwise. All we have is a statement in the application that says this won't adversely affect traffic, and it won't adversely affect the property values of the people that have already built out there and have detrimentally relied on the zoning. Was there a traffic analysis done by a traffic engineer? I did not see that. And a traffic engineer determined, he works with the developer to determine the ramifications of this project and how y'all are going to design it, the project, to alleviate those concerns. I refer to page 36 of the transcript. The drainage, which is, Mr. Heinrich, the drainage, which is always a concern, and I agree with that, and I'm sure people are concerned about that. We will, once we get past the step here, we will go into the design phase, and we will design our drainage to meet all the Harrison County requirements in MDEQ. So there are other detention ponds shown on this property on the site, and they will meet the Harrison County requirements for stormwater detention. Mr. Heinrich, we have to go to Harrison County first, and then we go to DEQ. And then it goes on to say that we've talked a lot about drainage and things like that, and it refers again that this will be to the design phase. Well, I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, we are in the design phase. And this is where you do your calculations. And to the developer, you owe it to the municipal authorities to tell them what you are going to do to your constituents. And you owe it to the municipal authorities to give them, the information they need to make sound, informed decisions concerning the project. Now, in my presentation, I wanted to ask some questions of the designer. May I do that?
I don't think so.
You
Okay.
can do the evidence
Well,
that's in the record before the board. Limited to the record that was done before the board.
I'm sorry?
You're limited to the record that was done before the commission.
Okay.
That's why you can't
Yeah,
ask
that's all the
questions.
evidence you can have.
You can't introduce new evidence.
I'm not asking for new evidence. I'm asking questions concerning the existing design
You can ask us.
as submitted in the planning commission
Yes.
meeting.
You can't call witnesses, so you can't ask questions of anybody in this.
Okay.
Part of the record.
Well, first of all, I would like to know who is the engineer of record? And are these plans stamped by a professional engineer? Do you know that? Do you know Mr. Bond?
Terry Moran is a PE that is on the site plan, which is not a design plan. It's not a
Okay,
construction
is
plan.
the,
Excuse me, go ahead and address the board. We can get Mr. Bucky on the rebuttal later.
okay, I just wanted to know if the plans as submitted have been stamped by a professional engineer.
Right. Okay.
Okay? If there's not a registered engineer, then who stamped them? And if it's Mr. Heinrich, and he is not a degreed engineer, then he's not allowed to stamp these drawings. And here's my other questions. Who performed the topographical surveys for this project? Are the retention pond designs based on a 25-year flood event? What is the duration of that flood event? And are the ponds required What is the duration of that flood event used in calculating the size of those ponds needed? And what percentage of the total runoff are the ponds required to hold? That should be done before you ever ask permission to do this project, because they're asking you if they can do this project, but they're not telling you how much water they're going to introduce into an already stressed system. So how did the engineer know how to reflect all this on this plat that was presented? That's what I want to know from the designer. And I'll just skip some of this. But anyhow, I'm going to refer to you something in the Mississippi construction law, which I used for about 25 years. It says here, under Mississippi Code 15:1-31, it is unlawful for any person to practice or offer to practice engineering in this state or use any title that conveys the impression that a person is a professional engineer unless he is duly registered pursuant to the requirements of Mississippi law. Pursuant to Mississippi law, those who practice professional engineering are those who, and it gives a brief description of all of these things that are required. Mississippi law extends the practice of engineering to include those who receive any fee or compensation or the promise of any fee or any compensation for performance, offer of, or attempted performance of the practice of engineering. So once a professional engineer is registered with the board, he must obtain from the board a seal which bears his name. The registrant must affix his seal to all plans, specification, plats, and reports, which he prepares and files with public authorities, that is you. These plans do not have professional engineering stamps on them, and you're being asked to evaluate these without the presence of or the work of a competent professional engineer. If you do that,
Okay, so time is pretty much up.
I'm sorry?
Time is pretty much up.
Well,
How much more do you have?
want about 2 minutes?
All right, go ahead. I yield my time.
Okay.
I think the rule is you can't do that, but we decide more.
No, it can be 30 minutes, 3 people or 1 person. Don is yielding his time.
This application and its attachments and vague promises is a bunch of crap. I'm just going to call it the way it is. I've done projects in over 30 different municipalities, and I've never had a problem with any citizen because we did our hard work up front. I worked as a public works manager dealing with far greater issues than this, and I've never seen anything like this. And it makes me angry that they're allowed to submit this garbage and ask that you approve it. And I submit to you, ladies and gentlemen, that these good people that you represent and work for are scared. They're scared for the flooding of their homes. They're scared for their decreasing property values. They're scared of making insurance claims that increase their rates. And they're scared for floodplain maps being redrawn, causing more loss of property value and causing more rate increases of their homeowners insurance. But they trust you. They trust you to defend them, not the developer. And the developer who cannot tell you and will not tell you the ramifications of this project development. Approve it and build it and let's see what happens is not an option. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. You have a glass of water on your desk, and I say, I've got a pitcher here, you don't know how much water's in it. Can I empty my pitcher in your glass? You go, well, how much is in it? I said, well, it'll fit, trust me. And I pour water all over your desk because you didn't know it was full. You don't know what they're fixing to do in this project. And my final question to you, and I'd like an answer, I really would, is how can you approve this project when you do not know the ramifications to the environment and to this community and these citizens?
Okay, thanks.
It was a question, sir.
No, we don't have to answer that question. We got to hear both sides.
Well, I would like that for the
Appreciate
record.
it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Next. You got 8 minutes.
I'm still thinking about blueberry pancakes.
I'm Donald Evans. I live at 18090 Archery Drive out in District 2 where this subdivision is, or this application has been filed. We believe that conditional use permit or the extension, whichever you prefer, should be revoked, as the application at the time of the public hearing did not have a land deed of ownership in it, so we're not sure who owns the property. And that is a major requirement for filing the application. It says so on it. It states very clearly and expressly. The application has a site plan, but the site plan doesn't state how much acreage is involved. It shows, and as I said earlier, it shows only one entrance and not at least two as required by safety regulations. Furthermore, the application doesn't provide any proof that excessive traffic by automobiles won't be created on John Clark Road, and there's no proof about the property values won't be negatively affected. Now, it's important to know that when someone comes before this board to change zoning or for a conditional use permit, they have the burden of proof to show to y'all all these things by clear and convincing evidence in order to get y'all to consider making any changes. You look at the Harrison County Comprehensive Plan, which I don't know why we hired Ohio State instead of Mississippi State.
Amen.
Paid them $750,000. But on page 26 of the comp plan, chapter 3, land use, goals, strategies, and action. Strategy B, look at action 1. It states to promote low to medium density for residential in G2. Action 7 states to revoke rezoning approval if there's no progress made in the development within 2 years. And that's to be done by the zoning officer. And this property, you know how long it's been going on. It hasn't reverted back to its prior zoning classification. We're not against progress. We just believe they need to decrease the density, and it should be compatible with John Clark residents and McGill's development and Dawnland. They have, as we stated, we're all in a precarious situation here without the protection of the code, and we've detrimentally relied on it since we built our homes. We think you should decrease the density as per the G2 comprehensive plan and our code. There's overwhelming opposition. There's 83 letters. Somebody said 85. I count 83. I'm not that good. But that many people showed up here to speak at the public hearing. We were limited to 2 minutes per person there because the applicants only needed 20 minutes and we had 10 people, so they limited us to 2 minutes per people or person. If 85 or 83 people would have showed up at that hearing, they would have gotten exactly 23.5 seconds each to make their point. So we need to come back and address the public hearing and people's rights to speak, free speech. A lot of the people in this area are on 2 to 3 acres, 1 to 3 acres, so we can't emphasize enough the decrease in density, not against developing and building homes out there. Wetlands and flooding, all this overdevelopment floods Flat Branch and Cubby Creek, Finley Branch, and it all winds up down where Bovenard and Turkey Creek area. Some of the subdivisions in between get flooded out during the flood season, not when it's dry like it is now during the flooding season. Addressing the need for new houses, there's 2,100 houses, if you Google, available in Harrison County for sale. 496 under construction. 76% increase between February and March. So there's no real public need to approve this application in its present form. We believe it's against the comprehensive plan. So we've got 49, another reason to deny this or send it back, remanded at the very minimum. We had 50 appellants of record on this appeal to you guys. Not one of us got a letter from zoning telling us what date this would be heard, either on the 5th or the 11th. We picked it up on an email to Winridge. Not one of us got a letter telling us when the hearing date would be, or the extended date as it was. So we think that was very unreasonable from a procedural aspect. The fact that there's no land deed in the record at the time of the public hearing, we think that's a procedural error as well. And now you've added to my insight about whether this is a new application or extension, that makes me wonder about that even. So we feel like we're the last vestiges, the people that fight these subdivisions to preserve the integrity and landscape of our county. And talking about S14, there's nothing in the record to show that anybody is hooked up to it. I've heard it was operational, but I don't know of anybody that's hooked up to it. I believe they're all still depending on the lagoon, which is over capacity. I believe he got fined back in 2014 because he couldn't really serve. You know, he by law, he says he has to give a will serve letter, but can he physically provide the service to this many new homes and more homes still coming? Now, don't forget, they're still building homes in Cardinal Point. That subdivision, they're still building homes there, so there's still development out there. But is there really a public need for another subdivision like that out in this part of District 2 and the G2 area? That's what we have to look at down the road. And, you know, are we just gonna blanket our G2 area and our rural areas with these pockets of smaller subdivisions, starter homes, instead of nicer lots and nicer homes for young professionals or those that are looking for something other than a starter home? That's what we're about. Do y'all have any questions?
Question that I would have, and I read in the transcript the issue with the deed. Would a deed of trust suffice for the requirement of a deed?
I saw a warranty deed in the record.
Huh?
There's a deed.
There's a warranty deed in the record.
It wasn't there at the time. The record will clearly reflect that Pat looked and there was not a land deed.
Was there a deed of trust in the record at the time?
You're talking about 2017 of the public hearing, but the deed was not in place then, correct?
No, I'm talking about the appeal to this place.
There's a 2006 warranty deed in the record before the board. Where did that come from, Patrick?
It came in after the planning commission meeting, but it was discussed and allowed to be presented, but the land roll clearly showed it was Wind Ridge, and the deed of trust was in there.
Wind Ridge, a different section.
No, ma'am.
This one, okay.
Yes,
Well, there's a deed in the record.
There sure is.
Well, they added that after the meeting and that's against your rules.
You can do that if they
but
talk
it
about
was
it.
mentioned in the planning commission meeting that it could be supplemented.
Well, that'll be a point of contention for us because it's supposed to be in there and it's a requirement when they go before. We didn't even know who owned the land.
Well, there's a 2006 deed that's on the land deed records if you want to look at it. But
Well, now, we shouldn't have to do that.
I understand.
I know.
The notice of the hearing, you're talking about you found out about the hearing and were able to attend the hearing.
But not the other appellants, they're not all here.
So there are some people that claim that they didn't get notice, didn't know about the hearing, didn't
Well,
get a
there's
chance to go to.
50 appellants, they're not here.
But those are people outside the notification zone required.
If
by-
someone signed a petition, that doesn't automatically get them on the
These are-
mailing list for the application. So everyone that was on the original mailing list, plus the appellant, got letters.
50 appellants.
I did not get anything.
Nope. Yeah, we're talking about the appellants of record for this appeal, not those that live within 300 or 200 feet. We had 50 appellants of record appeal to this body from the planning
Well, we're
commission.
talking about a
Okay,
hearing
sir.
before the.
Yeah, we
planning
appreciate that. We got to move forward. We're gonna ask the, thank you so much.
Well, I am somewhat curious, what he's saying, Patrick, did you notify, or does the ordinance require you to notify the 50 appellants?
I'm not aware of
I
that.
mean, we need to get this stuff clarified, because we're talking about some serious issues about people's property being what they feel like are affected, and that is serious. We all would be concerned about our neighbors, so if there's a requirement in the ordinance that those people be notified, were they notified? First, does the ordinance require that?
Doesn't require about the board. I don't think it's required, because they filed the appeal, that they be notified of the hearing before the board. But talking about the hearing from the planning commission, and this again goes back to whether or not it's a conditional use permit being extended or one previously granted or a new one. The notice could be different on those issues.
We update the mailing address each time an application.
Mr. Arlen, can I approach?
I guess you can.
Who was notified?
I don't mind, I don't know.
There's our appeal. Bottom pages.
Yeah, that's
Look at all the appellants on it.
I guess the question that I would ask and go to our attorney, number one, if I sign up for an appeal and I live 10 miles from the affected property, do I have standing to be an appellant, and do I have a right to a letter? I know we're dealing with some procedures now,
Probably
but
not.
that's something needs to be taken care of.
Probably would not have a right if you're 10 miles away.
But what about 3 miles? What about, at what point do we say that even though you're a participant in an appeal, you don't have necessarily a right to be notified?
There's a couple of different issues, and that's why I was trying to break it down. There's a notification required anytime there's a conditional use permit, and that's by the ordinance. And that's a limited number of people within so many feet of the 1,500 feet, Patrick? But then
300 feet
300 feet.
from the perimeter of the property and a minimum of 15 different property owners.
And then there's also a provision that the commission can expand that notification if it deems it appropriate. I remember we had that in a case one time. Second thing is now we've got a conditional use permit already granted, appealed to the board, affirmed by the board, it's not issued, comes back, and there's an application for an extension. Patrick, was new notice published and sent out on that extension?
Yes, sir.
But the same following the 300, but you didn't send it to the people that were part of the first appeal?
We go by the land roll as of, that exists at the time of the application. So people
I
buy
understand
and
that.
sell property.
These people paid for the appeal.
There it comes back, then it comes back again to the problem, because you have 2017, when it was first granted, this is an extension, created, or a new application that's still not clear.
If they still lived there, they would get the letter, but if they moved away, they would not.
So you looked at the land roads again when the new hearing occurred in May
Yes, sir.
of this year.
It's an electronic process on our GIS map.
So you treat it like a new application, you know, with an extension.
The reason, Tim, that I asked that question, what are we obligated to do? Because every time we have a hearing, an appeal or a hearing before this board, invariably you're gonna hear people say, I didn't get notice.
That doesn't apply before this board. This board issues an agenda that the courts have said over and over again, that you can go check the agenda. We don't have to, the board does not have to send out notices of hearing. They're an appellate, so they had to get some kind of
What I'm
notice.
saying, Tim, it's obvious that if they hear, they somehow heard and they're here, but I'm talking about for the commission.
For the commission's different.
If they argue that I didn't have an opportunity to speak before the commission, that's where the problem, I hear it every time.
Yeah, the code is very limited, as Patrick just recited, on what actually, the required notification is not very, it's very narrow.
Right.
So if you comply
Yes.
with that, and there's a publication in the paper, and the courts have said, you got a publication, you got an agenda published by them, not publicly, you got notice in the paper, you got notice required by the ordinance, which is 300 feet. So that notice is sufficient, even though somebody individual. Now, here, if these folks entered an appearance before the appeal, whether they're within 300 feet or outside of 300 feet, then they should get notice once they are a
That's
party
right.
of record
I
somehow.
think that's what Mr.
That's what I'm
Adams is saying.
saying. We paid our money, Tim.
I understand. Well, there's an appeal to this board where you paid your money. You didn't pay, that's different. Now, the notice before this board is entirely different than what's required before the planning commission. That's a different
Now,
notification.
the only way we found out about it, we got it intercepted an email to Winters. It wasn't directed to us.
Well, to the appeal to this board.
Right.
I can clarify.
I'm
that.
sorry, let me ask Pat, did you not, so this appeal was posted on our agenda. Does that not constitute notice?
Yeah, that's legal notice. But, you know, they should have been sent some notice of the hearing. I don't know who takes care of that for this board. But that's not a legal notification that prevents the appeal from going forward. The legal notification is the board's agenda. Not really.
All right,
Mr. President, I can just tell you what happened in my particular case is, We requested to delay instead of July 5th because it was right after the 4th of July holiday. So then I contacted the zoning office and asked them what time is our hearing. And so one of the girls from the office emailed me. They said I should have got a letter. I promise y'all did not. But the email was addressed to Windridge Properties, so I never saw a letter to myself. The email that was forwarded to me from zoning was addressed to Windridge Properties about the time of this hearing.
And you're talking about this particular here.
Yes, the one for today.
Okay. Next, proposing appeal, Mr. Mack.
I'm going to start. Bobby Heinrich, 1806 23rd Avenue, Gulfport. And let me catch my breath here for a second. But I wanted to start off by saying this application is to approve a 235 lot residential subdivision within an existing R1 zoning that was done back in right after 2006. This property has been surveyed. We've had a wetland delineation. We've gone through all the requirements that you're supposed to do when you apply for a conditional use application. Engineering is not required at this time. I think y'all know that by now. We do the light and street layout based on the requirements that's in the subdivision regs for Harrison County. And we do a light and street layout. We do some preliminary stuff. But at this point, it is not required. This is to allow us to move forward to do the engineering, detention, and all that. So the main thing was the water and sewer for this area. It's always been an issue with that lagoon, and when it became over capacity, I think when Audubon Lake, their last phase tried to tie into it, there wasn't enough capacity there. So, and I'm not involved in anything that Harrison County HCUA, Utility Authority, does with this. But then there was the talk about the S14 interceptor line. Okay, it's an interceptor. It catches these pump stations and things like that. A developer cannot tie right into the S14 line. It's an interceptor line. So our plan is to design our system as a gravity system to a pump station. That pump station will tie into Riverbend's force main, which goes into another pump station, which connects to the S14 interceptor. With that project being done, it allowed more capacity in this area to grow more development in this community. So I just wanted to make that.
If I may,
We will not.
in reference to that, with myself and Connie sits on the utility authority, Harrison County has spent over $1 million in reference to that, getting that S14 operational.
Yes, sir.
Now, when somebody tells me that that's not doing them any good, that something's wrong. Something is wrong. So what you're saying is that S14 is ready to go. What you're gonna have to do is do some other piping, gravitational or piping into those pump stations so that they can ultimately get into S14.
Yes, sir.
So S14 is functional.
Correct. S14 is completed. The reason it took so long, it was faulty work by a contractor, and they had to go in and redo the whole thing, and so it took more time. It took about 3 years. Okay, well, I've got to make it for the record. And we're waiting so long and doing all this stuff, but the developer has been wanting to do this since then. So let me catch up on the deed. When we talk about the deed, the deed's been submitted 3 different times. It's the same exact deed when he bought the property. So we turned in another copy of the deed at this last hearing.
We did, we were allowed to submit it after the fact, but we did have within the record, even without the deed, the description, all the things that were required. And Mr. Gillespie made a big point of that at the hearing for the Planning Commission, that we'd be allowed to submit it after the fact. And we did, and we did because you have it in the record now.
Minor issue.
The deed.
Okay, the deed. I want to talk just real quickly because I want to give this over to Malcolm, but We do have an updated will serve letter based on all this from Riverbend Utilities to take on our sewer and water for this project. I respect Mr. Lowry's comments, but at this point, this plan does not, there's nothing in the application that says it has to be stamped by an engineer. Mr. Terry Moran works in my office, and that's who I work under. I work under the direction of Terry Moran, who will be the engineer for this project. We will provide, if we move forward with this, we will provide the required detention for this project. We do it on every project we do. It's by law that we have to do that. I'll meet the local, Jackie will have her opportunity to review the plans, and it has to be approved ultimately by MDEQ for stormwater, for detention and stormwater control.
So you're just not that step.
We're just not there yet. We're only asking for us to move forward with 235 lots.
Who did or have you done that yet, your topographical survey?
Cliff Crosby did the surveying for this property.
He's a licensed surveyor, just as Mr. Moran's a licensed engineer.
And is it my understanding that after, this process is only to have the 235 homes, and
Right.
if you get into the project and the water is and the design is not sufficient, then our engineer will not permit you
Exactly.
to
Will
build,
not
is that
permit it
correct?
at all, neither will the DEQ for that matter. But your engineer absolutely will not approve it, we're well aware of that.
So, about people getting notified or about projects, just put it out on Facebook. That's how people get notified, I promise you. So, this is our layout. This layout is 235 lots. Phase one consists of this area right here. That's phase one. The rest is, there's 235 lots shown. And it was saying that, no, we don't want 60-foot wide lots in this development. Terrabrook and Canal, Cardinal Point were 60-foot wide lots. I think Cardinal Point was a little bit bigger. But these are 70 and 80-foot wide lots, every one. That's been like that from the day one application, or when we submitted the last application. They're 70 and 80 foot. We've made contingencies to make the lots bigger. We were asked to do that, and that's what the developer said to do. We've got the buffer off of John Clark Road that we were asked to do. We're preserving all these wetlands back here. We have amenities going in here. This will be a managed HOA. The home builder that my developer is talking to, it'll be managed. It'll have the required amenities and the green space that's required for Harrison County.
Now, let me ask you this, the zoning, the way I'm looking at this, is R1 to the north, the south, and the east of this.
It's a butts, you know, Miss,
I've got it, zoning map.
so it's abutted, as you said, on all the other sides that they failed to mention on R1. Right.
That's just a larger size than phase one. This is an aerial, if you can see it. This is Terrabrook right here. This is part of Terrabrook, the north portion of it, and they avoided the wetlands through here. That's why they're separated like this.
Right.
Audubon Lake is up here, on land, and then this is our project adjacent to it.
This is R1 here, that's R1 there, all the way around.
Where's the project again on that map?
Right here.
What?
This is us here, go in closer. Yes, sir.
Thank you.
This is that layout adjacent to Terrabrook subdivision. I'm sorry.
Probably was asking.
Is that east of Schaumbacher and by Wallace, in between Wallace Road and Schaumbacher? Same side as Wallace is on?
This is Wallace right here.
Yes, it's right here. That's your property right there?
Yes.
Okay.
It was 100 acres.
Just to kind of orient, I know you probably already know this, but it's up there north of Michael Memorial Baptist, and then, of course, over back to the west, on the soccer field, county farm, that sort of thing.
One other thing I'd like to say, the planning commission, we've been trying to work on, and I kept talking about rules, and I've been watching a couple of the videos from the board of supervisors, and it's about rules. we're simply following the rules, that's what's in place right now. The development rules, I say we, I've been asked a couple of things, but there's several people, in the development world that we're trying to get our subdivision ordinance to where everybody can be happy with development in Harrison County. People are moving here in groves. They're moving from the northern states down here because they want, and where do they pick? They pick Harrison County, Mississippi. This is where people want to live. And the county had put utilities out in this area for developers to tie into. That's what it's there for. And so I just want to reiterate that.
How much time do we have left?
Anyway, I want to get it to Malcolm, and I'll answer any questions you might have.
I have one question before, you mentioned the management team. We've heard management team many, many times before, and there's no follow through. What, is this gonna be a conditional use on this, Pat, or anybody? Is this gonna be conditional use that you have a management team there that's gonna, a management business, HOA? Because HOAs don't always work.
Right.
What we need
That's right.
is a management team to teach the HOA and make it a requirement in your covenant or your deed or whatever you do, but that needs to be addressed, I believe.
I will make that a requirement, that the HOA will be managed by a
Conditional use.
professional, and it's gonna be the home builder management team. And it'll be managed, throughout the whole entire development.
And after. That's what
It'll
we're
be,
at.
the homeowners association will be turned over, as they do, because it only lasts so long, and once it's built out, it'll
But
be
that
turned
needs
over.
somehow to be made very clear, because it's not clear in the older subdivisions.
Okay.
We can include that in the
That is-
restricted covenants too.
That has been asked of, our developers, on numerous projects, and we'll agree to this one as well.
That's the problem, once they're gone in 20, 30 years, there's no enforcement of recreating an HOA when people,
And they show up to the board of supervisors wanting us to maintain those parks. Well, I don't think it's obligation of the taxpayers throughout the county.
And I know, and what they usually do is they ask, well, can we build a house on
When
it?
the parks are
Right.
sold for or created within those plans, that it values that developer's property.
But the park
When
was
he gets his
created.
money and goes off, board of supervisors and taxpayers are responsible for maintaining them.
Pat,
And that's what I think, Tony.
didn't you ask for those parks to be created?
Yes, ma'am, it's a
It's in the-
requirement of
it's
the
in
zoning ordinance for the
requirements
parks.
now. That's the problem.
And I'll make it for the record that they will be maintained by the homeowners association.
Okay.
Before y'all start, may
Yes, sir.
pick up your time. Right at the beginning of the transcript, I think the issue, I think in your mind, and probably in the appellant's mind, was the extension.
Right.
And the justification for the extension. And of course, y'all's justification for not starting was the fact that S-14 was not operational at that time.
Nope, that was a fact. It
There was a
existed at that
mention from the appellants, I can't remember who it was, but brought up the issue that if that was the case, y'all had, I presume the same developer had developed other properties, and that didn't seem to be a problem, S-14.
Right.
So,
This is not the same
How about
developer.
addressing that?
It's not the same.
Did y'all have other developments during that time
This is not the same
that
developer.
would be subject to the S-14 sewer system?
Let me show you this.
Different.
You see this cleared area right there? That's the S-14
That's right.
easement right through there. And it's adjacent to this property, or it's on the north border of this property.
Bottom line, did y'all have any developments occurring during the issue of the time that we're talking about? Did your developer or did somebody develop subdivisions or anything that would be on, that would later be on S-14? Did you develop properties that were going into that lagoon during the time of the issue from the 17 approval? Follow what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You argued that you couldn't develop because the S-14 wasn't operational.
True.
Did you have any other developments going on during that time that you went on and developed the property?
I say no.
No, sir. Not my
I'm
office.
saying no.
Right.
That's what counts.
Any
Right,
questions to these guys?
all right. So, do I go now?
Yes,
Okay.
just for the record, I think there's a couple of minutes left on these first 10 minutes. Is there any other speakers, or are you gonna take up the rest of the time?
I'll take it first.
Okay.
All right, so, to begin with, you know, a lot of what's been talked about is, well, let me start with standing, because that was an important point that Mr. Ladden made. I actually made the objection, you probably read it in the transcript, where I objected to the standing of certain people. Okay, Miss Angel and her family and other people that live around the property close by, I think they absolutely have standing. You know, some of the people, I live across the street, you know, I'm over here, that kind of thing. But Mr. Evans and Michael Nikes, they came from the Dyer Hills and Audrey, which is clearly a mile away. A mile away. And so at some point, you do have to say, when is somebody adversely affected when they're that far away? Now, I realize in municipal properties, you probably have to be closer, and maybe in the country and rural, you can be further out and still be adversely affected, but we objected to the standing, and I'm renewing that objection because I do not believe that people that live a mile away are going to be able to show that they're adversely affected. Now, the reason that they are here objecting is because they objected on another subdivision that we had that eventually was approved, and there's no appeals on that anymore. It's resolved in court. But they just showed up because they fought me before, so now they're fighting me again on this one. So I renew that, as I said, that standing argument. I also object any testimony or evidence that was presented today that was outside of the record that was presented to the Planning Commission. I need to make that objection to preserve it before the circuit court if we go to that route. I guess the main thing about this situation is, I've heard a lot of talk about the comp plan. Well, one thing that was left out is what zone or transact is it in, or what growth sector more importantly is, and it's in a G2, which is a controlled growth sector. This is in your comp plan. It's on page, in the community plan for Western Harrison County, it's map 2-2. And all of that area of John Clark Road on that side is in the orange, it's in the G2 controlled growth sector. What is that? That's the neighborhood residential. It says the areas that have access to major roadways and proposed or existing water and sewer. The development consists of 1 to 3 housing units per acre. In this particular case, our subdivision, the ratio is 2.35 units per acre. So we are less than the 3 max that is allowed in the G2 growth sector. In other parts of the county that's not part of the G2 growth sector, more over to the west, over in these areas over here, like the G1 areas, those arguments would make sense about the density. But in this particular one, your comp plan allows that. All right, moving on to the conditional use factors. Mr. Evans put on a lot of evidence or testimony about whether or not it was public need. You don't have to show a public need for conditional use. You have to show public need and change in circumstances when it's a rezoning. We're not talking about rezoning. This was rezoned a long time ago. This is a conditional use. I'm not even sure that the burden of proof is by anything more than a preponderance of the evidence. I don't think it's by clear and convincing evidence, but regardless, the Planning Commission felt and believed that we met all the criteria in section 1404.03. We talked about the comp plan. We're not asking for any variances. The only thing that really are the factors that you look into is whether or not it's going to be injurious to the property in the neighborhood. We're talking about areas surrounding this, not all the way down to Dare Hills, but even to that, we don't believe that we adversely affected that area. It is very similar in nature in the sense that we're talking about lots 70 to 80 foot. We're not talking about the smaller ones. We know that the board has said, and eventually you're going to adopt that ordinance amendment that's going to pretty much do away with the smaller lot requirement. But this one already meets that, 70, 80 footers. We took out the 60 footers a long time ago prior to the 2017 hearing. One of the questions is whether or not the area is going to be adequately served by essential public facilities, highways, drainage, sewer, schools, all of these typical county services that you provide. We went into it, it's going to have a will serve letter. We got an updated will serve letter for the 2022 hearing. It's going to be served by Riverbend for both water and sewer. S14's been repaired now, so we can go ahead and go into the main at Riverbend, and eventually it'll make its way through the lift stations till it gets to the interceptor. But nobody's going to be able to tie in directly to an interceptor. You just can't do that because it's just not set up that way from an engineering standpoint.
You're gonna get wet if you do.
You're going to get real wet because it's under pressure, and
Get thrown backwards.
yeah, exactly. But thank God, it's all fixed, and it took a while to get there, but, we were patient. Now we're here asking to move forward with the project. I looked at the Gulf Regional Planning site that deals with the traffic database, and in 2018, which is the most recent data, they're showing 2,500 cars per day traveling through the area, so it's not really increased from the 2,500 that was originally in the study from 2015. Contrary to some people's, I guess, thoughts, that is a collector route. It's not just a small road out in the county. John Clark is a major collector, and it does have, it connects, as you know, to County Farm, which eventually connects to shortly into Highway 53, which has a lot of improvements that have been done in recent years, the last several years, to make that a much more accessible thoroughfare to travel to. If you're going north or if you're going south, you get into all the improvements that go down into Canal Road and further to the south. The ADT, or the average daily traffic count that I got from Gulf Regional, the closest place that I could find that was recorded was right at the intersection of where you come off Canal Road onto John Clark. So we do have the required number of access roads coming into the subdivision. We have 2. That's what's required. I'm real familiar with the International Fire Code. I'm real familiar with what the county fire marshal requires. We meet all those requirements. I'm sure that if we didn't, we would have gotten comments back. But if there are things that we have to do later on after they study this further, we'll have to comply with that as well. We were not required to do a traffic study. That was not a requirement that was placed on us by the Planning Commission. But we are willing to create deceleration lanes, whatever is required after Ms. Jackie and others get a chance to plow into the actual design plans as we move forward. One of the things that was brought up was whether or not it was going to be a detriment to the property values in the area. We did say that it would not create a detriment to the area as far as property values. The opponents, the appellants, put on no proof through real estate appraisers or real estate agents or even data or studies or anything that would say that creating a subdivision out in that area was going to drive their property values down. I would assert to you that the tax assessor would tell you the same thing, that it does not cause property values to go down. If anything, it causes them to increase. However, they don't just do a wholesale increase of property values just because something is developed next door. So it doesn't cause them to go up and have to suddenly pay extra taxes. I know that everybody, because I've done this so many times now for so many different subdivisions, and I've had to fight it every single time, but the planning commission now reads something off, at the time of the hearings to let people know that even though they want to talk about all the drainage, that there's really not the proper time to bring it up. I mean, it really does come up later on in the process, and there are other opportunities to go ahead and have their input about drainage. But one thing I will tell you for sure is that when you have engineers looking at a problem and studying it and working on it, you're going to see an improvement in the drainage patterns out there. You're going to see help that's going to come to it because Jackie is very exacting. She, as a county engineer, really upped the game, if you want to call it that, after she came in, and y'all provided her some additional resources, some additional engineering engineers, and so you just don't get away, if you want to call it that, with what happened years ago. It's not like that anymore, and I know everybody wants to point to this subdivision and that subdivision. It's horrible over here, it's horrible over there. Well, I wish they would point to one of them that she's had her fingerprints on that's been built and show me where there's a problem, because we've seen a higher, scrutiny and a higher requirement to meet the requirements. And I also know the same thing exists at the state level with the DEQ. So there are people looking out for these people. I know they don't think that that's happening, but there is a big old process you've got to go through, and it's not some simple deal just because it's out in the county. If anything, I think your process is just as demanding, in some cases, more so than smaller cities, what they require. So there is that opportunity to make sure that people are not adversely affected from a drainage standpoint, but that will be addressed at a later time. Everybody is afraid of change. I get that. I see that. I understand that. I know that when you live a certain way and you want to keep it going that way because you like it. But, the county is not, it's just not what it was even 10 years ago. It's certainly not what it was prior to Katrina. I mean, this county is probably more metropolitan and more urban in some ways than any other county in the state. And so you have to treat the areas that are suburban, closer to the city limit lines, like this one is, to, how you just can't, what you would do in far western Harrison County is not the same thing you would do in these areas where you have water and sewer that's in place. You have to look at it separately and differently. I think the county's doing a good job of that. I know that a lot of people are saying, look, we just can't have this many cars out there, we can't have this many more people out there, we're not going to be able to keep up with schools and all that. The school systems, and I've spent time speaking with the Harrison County school systems and trying to find out how they work on these things. They're planning right now today. They're watching what you're doing. They're looking at subdivisions you're approving, because from the time they start with the idea to the time they build the building, it's about 3 years or 4 years. Mr. Ladner, I know you were in education. They cannot wait on the development. They have to anticipate it. And so they're out there right now working on it. If you just look at the Harrison County plan out there and how much they've spent just in the last year or so, I mean, it's tremendous. And so they are working on new places, they're working on new schools, and they're working on improving and expanding capacity on others. So Harrison County school system is not some stepchild out here. They're a big outfit, and they're using proper methods with Mr. Hardy, their architect, who's working to make a plan for the future. I could probably say more, but I think at this point, I'll just say this. I think this is a subdivision that meets the requirements that you've asked for. I believe it actually exceeds it in many ways. Excuse me, I'm sick all weekend, but I wanted to be here. It's important. I think in this particular case, like I said, we have tried to go ahead and do all the things. I think those conservation subdivision maps that you have up there might actually be out of date. I'm not sure if those are the most up-to-date ones.
That's 12 to 14 years old at this point.
Okay,
Not
so.
one person has
Right.
tried to do one.
Right, so, you actually have even more detailed plans of things you want to see going into the future, and, we're all working, with developers to try to make sure those amenities and walking trails and all kinds of things are in place. We don't put lots into wetlands anymore, we changed all that. As you change, we change, so I think that this one, even though it has a bit of a date on it, it also meets the requirements as you see it today. In fact, if you had that amendment in place about the lot sizes, this would comply. This would comply. It's not like we're talking about small lots. Anyway, I know it's your job to go ahead and do a balancing act. You want to take care of the people that are out there, but at the same time, prepare for new residents, new constituents, and so I believe this is a good plan, one that you can approve and will be proud of as you go forward, because there's one thing for sure, Harrison County is the place to come, and people are coming from all over to get here. So, thank you.
May I ask Michael a couple of questions
Yeah.
on this procedural? Reading the record from May.
Yes.
Hearing, Mr. Heinrich and Mr. Heinrich and yourself both said that y'all were here on an extension. In fact, you said, we're not here to start all over.
One of the reasons I said that was because Pat said we're under the same case number, and he said all of the record that had been created before was part of this record. So that's why I said that.
I think that's actually okay.
All right.
I mean, I think the question I have in my mind is whether or not we've created a procedural issue that's gonna get us kicked out of court. And that is that they extended a permit, which is a different issue, different standard. Even though you say you comply with it, and I just got to read it.
Yeah.
You remember Judge Dotson criticized the commission and the board for not making all the findings for a conditional use permit. There's a list of them in 1403.
Right. And I think you need to make those same findings today if you're going to.
I just
move
read
forward.
both of these transcripts. And
Right.
The only finding I see is that it was compatible with the neighborhood.
Right.
That they didn't make any findings before the commission that Judge Dotson said we had to make, and now this board's limited to the record. How are we gonna make those findings?
That's right, and they can make the same, they can go ahead and create, the same issue occurred, if you recall, before, the next time we came back. And the next time you said, at this point, I would ask you to go ahead and include the correct findings, so they can correct it at this
The
level.
record has to support it.
Yes.
That had a huge record, as I recall. So
It did.
was there, but
And because this included the record that was from before and the new information I put into the record, it's all there now. Okay? All I would suggest is that, Tim, if we had only gone for an extension, number one, it wouldn't have been advertised. Number two, they wouldn't have gone ahead and sent notices out to everybody. All of those things, we wouldn't have had to fill out a complete application. It would just have been a letter. None of that was done as just an extension.
my concern about that, and I don't disagree with it, Joe.
Yeah.
It looks like you tried to make a new one.
Yes.
That isn't what it was called, so people out in the public see that it's an extension of already granted conditional use permit, may decide they don't wanna appear because they don't know that it's a whole new application.
That's not what they said.
I understand, I'm just theorizing this problem, how do you get?
Saying the public just said they
There was
considered it.
full
I
participation
know
by the
that,
public.
but the notice went out as an extension, correct?
The notice went out as conditional use, correct?
That's my point.
Extension of a conditional use.
Yes, and so call it, if you want an extension, call it a new application. The point is, they treated it as if it was, because if it was not a new application as you call it, then they wouldn't have had to get into all that information. I would stand up and say, well, looks like S14 is fixed, I'm ready to go, and they'd say, okay, that's it. But that's not what we did. We went into everything. We went into traffic, we went into drainage, we went into all of that. I mean, it was a long hearing. And let me just tell you this, if you have any doubt about it, look how many appellates I have. That doesn't mention how many people showed up.
The record's 48 pages long. It's
Yes.
Very long.
Yes, and we had, I think Donald Evans said it, I might be wrong about it, 83 people or whatever showed up, or whatever it was. And look, even though they do try to limit it, the time frame, people turn in written letters, and those are considered too. Even though you're not there in person speaking, all those letters are read by those planning commissioners. So it was a fully developed record. All right? And I'm sure if we got a mistake, you know? And you know this, Tim, it's all about substantial compliance at the end of the day, you know? And you're granting.
Judge Dotson's admonition still rings in my ear.
I know that.
Okay.
And let me tell you this, I paid attention to that too, but I've also had other ones go before other judges and they say, look, did you get a full hearing? Was it a fair hearing? Is it a perfect hearing? No, but that's what this is about. And look how much time we're spending today on this. Thank you.
May I look at
Thank you.
the plan? You see, Mr. President, the conundrum that I see myself, and if I'm not mistaken, when you consider the conditional use, I voted no on that, if I'm not mistaken, okay? I don't see anything at this point from the evidence that's been presented, either way, from either side, to change my opinion of that. However, if we were considering a delay or an extension, I can see where you could not develop your property because of S14. And that's why I asked you the question, did y'all do other developments in there? Because if you did, that kills your argument S14 was a problem. So it's the conundrum. I haven't seen anything that changed, and I know y'all got a rebuttal, but I haven't seen anything that changed in reference to the conditional use permit. I would still be opposed to that. But the issue whether the extension should be granted, that's another issue that I would consider because of the S14 project. So what are we voting on?
Well, nothing yet.
Well, we got-
Gotta have a
That's
rebuttal.
the issue. Now, I'm sorry, Mr. Evans, I think you wanted to do a rebuttal, and I would wait
Okay.
till after his rebuttal.
Okay, we got rebuttal. Mr. Evans gonna do the 5 minutes?
All right, I probably won't take all that, you may have a question. So everything I'm hearing about, I'm Donald Evans, I live at 1809 Waco Drive in Gulfport, Mississippi. This property was rezoned back in 06 or 07, but for some reason, they didn't have the utilities then to support the rezoning. That may have been why you voted against it. So that's, you know, that concerns me, because now it's being used as reasons for non-development, is that, oh, well, we didn't have the utilities. Well, how did you get it rezoned in the first place? And we're not against development in that area. We just want the density decrease. We're against the application in its present form, and we've got some procedural objections we made, and he talked about the engineers are not gonna build subdivisions that flood. Well, we have subdivisions now that flood, that are a big problem because of the density of the subdivisions. They talked about lot sizes, and I don't know if they mentioned square footage, but they really can't guarantee the square footage and the lot sizes. I understand, Pat, there may be a new provision where they can come in and request a conditional use permit and decrease the size of the lots without having a public hearing.
If they reduce the number of lots, it is not a problem. If they attempt to increase the number of lots, then they have to apply for a new conditional use permit.
And is that a public hearing, or can they just get it passed without a public hearing?
No public hearing if they decrease the number of lots over time.
But if they increase the number of lots, do they make them smaller?
This doesn't exempt the timeline. So if it's expired, it expires and it's a new development at that point. But if in the engineering process they discover that it can only get 220 lots, that does not require a new conditional use permit.
Okay, so in this area, all of the appellants are still on water wells and septic tanks. We have no utilities. Same reason why they haven't been able to develop this proposed property is, you know, they've had trouble with utilities from the get-go. And that makes one wonder, well, how did they get it changed in the first place? Well, there's no guarantee. I agree with the homeowner HOA concerns, but there's no guarantees on that. They can't make them. The record doesn't even show who's gonna build the homes. We don't even know who's gonna build the subdivision. And as far as my standing to object or speak, free speech at a public hearing, I live downstream from this proposed branch, or subdivision. I live downstream from Flat Branch, or downstream on Flat Branch, and all this water is gonna be flowing to the backside of my property. So I'm gravely concerned about the lagoon when it overflows and comes down my way and even goes further down into Covey Creek and Bob Bernard and Turkey Creek. So I do have standing to object. Do y'all have any questions for me? I think Pat may have a question.
These drawings are not stamped by a registered engineer, and the reason being is because you have lagoons, retention ponds, and these retention ponds, if you do your engineer work for calculation of runoff, you'll know what the size of those are. That's why the engineer will not stamp these plans. In reference to Mississippi construction law, Mississippi Code Annex ANN 73-13-1, there are requirements that you have to have in order to submit plans and specifications to public authorities. And failure to do that is gross negligence, malpractice, or incompetence. The fine for that is $1,000. The jail term is 3 months because it's considered a misdemeanor. The reason these plans are not stamped.
Just that you got 45 seconds.
The reason these plans are not stamped is because the engineering work has not been done. That is done in the design phase. That's where we're at. You're being asked to approve a project and you don't know how much water is going to be introduced into an already stressed system. It's plain and simple. The picture and the cup.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
If I may, Jackie, don't you have to maintain, when we're building, if I'm not mistaken, could you tell them the step-by-step that they have to finish before they can even begin your building on the drainage?
When we leave, when this step is resolved, if it's approved, the next step is for them to start developing their plans and specifications. The full design, the water, the sewer, the road grading, topographic survey, all that stuff is the next phase. We have an extensive list of requirements that they have to meet, including retention on site for the 25-year storm. We do look at the sewer, whatever receiving entity it is that takes that utility has to review and approve it for us to review it. They do have to get the state review and approvals. If there are wetlands on site, they have to have those delineated by a professional and confirmed by the Corps of Engineers before it can come through our office. And then we do a very detailed checklist of every element involved in that plan set to make sure that it meets our specifications before they're allowed to begin construction.
Thank you. And I will say that in the past, they have not been as strict, I don't think. We have not, and as we are now. And we've run into some issues and we've resolved those issues because of Jackie. Thank you.
If I might, I would like to add one other thing. That's the one subjective side to that is that they're required to retain all drainage for a 25-year storm according to our code. And we do have some leeway to require additional drainage restrictions from the site if there are known drainage concerns around it, which is why I'm here listening to exactly all these concerns, so that if we do have existing flooding problems around a site, we look to try to improve those through this design.
Jackie, I have a question.
What's the duration factor?
Mr. Lowry.
I'm sorry.
Sorry. My question, Jackie, is something actually Mr. Lowry mentioned, was the calculation of runoff. When is that done and by whom?
It's done by the professional engineer during that design time. Once the layout is actually set, they start actually laying out lots. What you've seen so far is a schematic. Then they do their grading. They do calculations of how much runoff will increase based on roads, curbings, driveways, houses. Even taking wooded areas into mowed yards increases runoff. And so at that point, the volume of the detention ponds are determined and the release rates are determined, and they're reviewed both by our office and by the state.
Okay, and the person doing the calculation of runoff is someone hired by the developer?
Generally, it's gonna be a registered professional engineer signing it, yes.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm prepared to make a motion.
May I?
Before you do, Beverly, and I know we've been through this, and I don't know if Tim can answer this question. And I think he knows what's coming. What are we voting on?
We're
Are we
voting on
the
whether or
extension
not,
of the conditional use permit, or are we voting on the conditional use permit itself again?
we're voting on the appeal of the planning commission's decision to approve case file 17098C030. That's what we're voting on, the appeal.
For extension.
What's the
of
appeal?
permit.
Pardon me?
I think it's for the extension of the conditional use permit, or not. That's a different standard than granting the conditional use permit, in my opinion.
I hope not the
Conditional use
conversation.
permit's already been granted under the current circumstances, they just extended it. That's what's before the board.
So I'm prepared.
Which is a different standard if it goes up on appeal, in my opinion.
So we're voting on, in your opinion, we should be voting on the extension.
Extension, whether or
And
not
whether their request to extend it is justified.
They've already got the conditional use permit.
Yes.
So I'll make a motion to deny the appeal based on the S14 completion, so that they may move forward.
Wait a minute. So who can move forward?
Further developers can move forward.
Okay. So you're voting to
Deny the
deny the
appeal.
appeal.
Ms. Martin?
Hold on, one more thing, can we get a second? to that?
Second.
For discussion, okay.
All right. I'm concerned that if you go ahead and just vote on it as an extension, somebody is gonna try to twist that somehow.
My motion is to
So-
deny the appeal.
I understand that, so if that's the case, then I want it to be clear that what we're requesting and what we did before the planning commission was to move forward as if it was a new application, and it was treated as a new application for conditional use, and I think it's a fair question that Mr. Ladner's asking.
But the
So-
motion to deny the appeal, if it passes,
Right.
opens the door for you to move forward, in my opinion, now. if
Okay,
it's not
as long as it's
before
clear
this
that's what you're
happens,
working upon, then I'm
That's
good
fine
with
with
it. I
me.
just wanna make that
I'm just
clear.
going on what
Or in
we're.
effect, the motion that Beverly's making is also sustaining the decision of the commission.
Right.
Right,
That's correct.
right?
Yes.
Yeah. Call a question.
Okay. Is there any further discussion?
But just so the board knows, what Mr. Malcolm is referring to is whether or not the board is gonna make findings consistent with the conditional use permit or not.
That's
You're not going to based on the motion.
What's that? I'm sorry.
He's worried that we did not go through the elements of the conditional use permit, granting of a conditional use permit or not. Therefore, the record's not gonna have that finding by the board. But that's not what's before the board. in my opinion.
Again, my
Well-
motion is to deny the appeal
There you go.
currently before the board to approve case file 17098C030, in essence, concur with the planning commission.
Could I ask
For a
you,
second.
Ms. Martin, could I ask you to include within that motion findings that we did meet the requirements of section 1404? That's what Mr. Holloman and I are talking about. If you don't have that in there, I'm afraid the judge is gonna kick it
I
back.
can include that because it's in this backup on the evidence.
Ma'am?
Is it all in this backup
Yes,
on
it
the
is.
evidence from what I
Yes.
see? So I'll include the evidence currently before us.
I don't have a problem with that.
You
Okay.
include those findings then? It meets section 1404.0310?
Correct. I agree with that. To see if the conditional use permit was granted, it met it.
All right, thank you.
Is there any further discussion? All in favor of the motion, say aye. All opposed?
No.
Motion carries. Now, we need to get a motion to go to executive session.
Yes.
Motion to go into executive session in state of our
Motion.
Motion, okay.
Review versus review matter of pending litigation. To discuss my conversation with the AG's office regarding tourism, which particularly
been
County
sitting there
Development
patiently
Commission,
waiting.
which is a matter of potential litigation. Harrison County Development Commission, Highlands Development, which is a matter of potential litigation. And Ursula Staten, which is a pending litigation matter. Ursula Staten.
And the, Peter Newman had to leave,
Yeah.
so I don't know if we're.
Are we gonna have a third meeting this month for 21 days?
Do we need to?
Peter, let me quickly, Peter explained a little bit clearer why there's an urgency. The CSX filed its statement of value with the Department of Revenue, and the county has so many days, I don't know how many it is, he texted me, there's a time limit for the county to object to that assessment they submit to the Department of Revenue. So I think we can discuss it executive session shortly, and then y'all, that's a matter of.
Which one we're gonna take first, because, Bill and him.
Oh, we can do Bill first.
So we doing all five?
Yeah. Frank is old, and
We're doing.
We just need.
Yeah, that's what AG office,
Tourism.
tourism, HGCC, Highlands and Ursula Staten. You wanna sign or you wanna take a break?
I was gonna take a break.
this one time, I don't mind taking a break.
Me too.
Go get me a drink.
Literally, like, can we watch the meeting? No one wanted to do
I'll make a
it.
motion, come out.
We
Do we get a second?
ignore facts. You're right. That's a great way to do it.
We need a second.
Got a
Second.
Okay, all in favor of the motion, say aye. All opposed, okay. Tim?
During the course of executive session, the board undertook matters listed previously, no action was taken in the executive session. I do need 2 items taken care of. I need a motion to approve compromise and settlement of the feud versus the sheriff's department and authorize payment from the Tort County amount of $25,000.
So moved.
Second?
Okay, without any further discussion, all in favor of that motion, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, that motion carries.
Then I would like to request an order authorizing the board attorney to investigate the railroad assessment with the city attorney for Biloxi and file any appeals deemed necessary to contest the assessment if necessary.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor of that motion, say aye. All opposed, motion carries. Motion to adjourn.
That's it.
Oh,
Motion. There's more.
Oh, I'm sorry, you're right. Here it is, right here, I forgot. Pass that. Oh, that's a setting a hearing on the redistricting. I knew I was gonna forget it, I had it right in front of me.
We gotta set a hearing on the redistricting.
For,
We got 2 of
Two
them.
of
Oh, 2 hearings?
Your budget
Same
hearing,
hearing, but.
we're gonna do one on August 2nd, one on August 9th. First one's in Gulfport after your budget hearing, the second one will have to be over here. Unless y'all want one in your district, the changes are minimal.
I have it over here. This is my district.
Well, no, we are.
Where?
August 9 will be here, August 2 will be in Gulfport.
at the, what's the time for the 4 p.m.?
4,
And go play in the boardroom?
yes, sir.
Here in the boardroom?
Yes,
It's
sir.
4 p.m. on both of them, or we're
Yes,
gonna
ma'am.
do the
That's
one on the
late.
second right after our meeting? Don't we meet on the second?
You meet on the 1st.
You meet on the ninth, the ninth,
They're on
no, you meet on the
Tuesdays,
first
they
and
were
the,
set on
first and the
Tuesday.
eighth.
Well, y'all wanna do them on the first and second Monday, or they gotta be so many days apart?
I was just doing them a week apart. You're doing your budget hearings every day then?
Do we need to sign this?
No,
Just
sir.
showing the date of when we would discuss.
It's up to y'all. That's why, it's up to you to do whatever you want to.
Huh?
It's up to you. Just
Yeah,
tell me
because y'all are
when
gonna
to
be in
get it.
recess day to day at that moment, at that point.
When does it start again?
August
Or is
2nd.
it,
Your
Our
budget-
first meeting is
budget.
August 1st, and the second is August 8th.
oh, the second is my anniversary. I'm sure we're gonna have a lot.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying, y'all are gonna be.
So what do y'all wanna do? You
budget.
wanna do it after our board meeting on the first and the?
You talking about that here?
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's not gonna be anything to that.
Yeah.
Have it during the meeting. Oh, at the beginning or at the end?
So let's
After,
change it
right
to
after.
9:30 on the first and
There's not gonna be
9:30 on
any,
the
there's
8th.
not gonna be anything to it.
Can we do that? Change it
Sort of
to
like
Monday?
a bond hearing.
So August first and August.
Well, the only thing is, so, once we make it public, when we have people that might wanna show up.
I don't think they ever have.
We
Never
didn't have
happened,
Never
not
had.
in a few
We didn't
years.
have a living soul last time. I said that.
If you were making major changes,
Be different.
you might, but there's no major change.
So I'll make a motion, we have open public hearings on the first and the eighth, whatever that is.
At 9:30,
It's Monday and Monday.
Monday and Monday at
First and
9:30.
Okay.
and authorized publication,
Monday, 9:30.
notice of, publication of notice.
Whatever that person said Monday is.
It's the
Then we
first.
got it in Gulfport envelopes.
Can we get a second on that?
Second.
I'm so sorry, second. I was looking at this thing. Do we have to sign it?
All in favor of the motion to first and the eighth, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, I guess that motion carried.
9:30 a.m.
We get any public information requests for these redistricting maps or anything?
No, not that I'm aware of, I don't recall any.
Have you seen anything?
I haven't seen anything.
I think I got a call a couple of months ago, they asked me where we were in the process, I said,
And what,
somebody called me
Any
from
news
Ole
media
Miss.
was asking for public information on these
Like a
redistricting
copy of
counties.
the
on
map.
what?
Through the county line,
Redistricting.
redistricting.
Oh,
I know the
really?
city's been, got quite a few of them.
Angel asked about.
I haven't had
The school system, in the city, didn't do that.
I mean, mine is having a large shift, but I just, didn't want to pick that fight with Connie, so I let it go.
What was that?
Well, no, I'm saying the redistricting, I'm losing 893 people, when I brought it up, it was a nightmare, so I'm letting it go.
I think I had to gain.
Yeah, well, you're gonna gain a little from me, but that's fine, you needed it.
So do we need a third meeting or not?
I don't see why we need a third
We've
meeting.
been meeting from day
There's
to
2
day in
weeks.
August.
Okay, so I'll make a motion that we adjourn.
Adjourn, yeah.
Oh, did Joe get the letter from Half Long
Oh,
for
yeah.
his resignation from
Yeah.
retirement?
Talk to him.
Okay,
We probably need to look
Go-
at finding
spread it on
somebody right
minutes?
away.
I can do it for the next meeting.
Yeah,
I'll go ahead and post, get it together so we can start posting, get it, advertised.
I tell you what, something's been done about
we just
confusion.
gotta get better
Yeah, it's a
procedures.
mess.
There's gotta be better procedures.
Oh,
in
no.
line. Gotta be better procedures, cause that can get us in a bind when we make decisions.
You got a form, you got a checklist, this is what you.
You got-
Well, like this, extension versus
Excuse me.
new. That was confusion that should have been solved before.
Yeah.
Y'all just need to vote on adjourning.
Okay, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.